There's a Bear Shifter audiobook by Jane Roe. A romancely.com story. Blurb. A Bear Shifter, paranormal romance novel. Amelia never thought a midlife crisis would hit her so hard or so fast. To find some peace, she goes on sabbatical to a secluded cabin. But fate quickly intervenes in the form of two handsome men, Joe and Skylar. As they guide Amelia around the area, they ignite a passionate flame within her heart. But Amelia discovers a startling secret: Joe and Skylar are bear shifters. And now she finds herself in the midst of a supernatural war with the Coyote clan. With danger at every corner, will Amelia reconcile the fact that she is in love with two men at the same time? Get answers in this Bear Shifter romance book by Jane Roe.
If you want more paranormal romances like this, please, my love, be sure to subscribe to the Romancely YouTube channel. I look forward to spending more time with you. Subscribe and let's make it happen.
Chapter 1. Teaching classes at a charter school in Maine had sounded like an ideal job when Amelia Fryer was fresh out of college a few years ago. She'd snapped up the position and relocated from Chicago almost without even batting an eye, and she really hadn't looked back ever since. Of course, that was partly because she had nothing in Chicago to look back to. She was the only daughter of her now-deceased parents, so home simply wasn't there anymore. Now, 4 years later and just about to turn 28, Amelia had recently been forced to take a good look at her life and where it was going. People liked to joke around about her making a better librarian than a teacher, call her a prude, or generally discount the fact that she was a person at all. Men saw her as some untouchable little wallflower, and as a result she rarely dated, just sat in her studio apartment reading or writing or knitting something staid to wear. To be honest, she had been so fed up with it all recently that she went against her better judgment and started to see Samuel Simmons. He was a truck driver who was hardly ever around, but every few weeks or so for about the last year, he would come by her place and she would feed him dinner. The last few times he'd been there, the man had been more amorous than usual, actually graduating from a kissing to petting at last. But then she had discovered that it wasn't just petting he had been doing with Sally Gothright. He'd actually gotten pregnant, and they'd be getting married in less than 3 days. Now, Sam kept insisting that the two of them had never been anything but friends, and as she looked back on all the time they'd spent together, she supposed he wasn't far from wrong. Still, it had opened her eyes to her complete ignorance of how such things worked. Here she was, degree in hand and in charge of molding young minds in a prestigious private academy, and she didn't know the first thing about real life. Well, no more. She was about to do something to change all of that. She had just booked a mountain cabin for 2 months out at Moosehead Lake, where she intended to completely reinvent herself. She intended to buy herself a better wardrobe, get her hair done, maybe even paint her nails, and most importantly, buy a swimsuit that actually showed off a bit of flesh. That one was the scariest part of it all, since her strict upbringing had prohibited her showing off much of that before now. Nervous of her decision now that the plans were made and her bags were packed, Amelia stepped into her bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror, as if trying to make certain if she really could pull something like this off. Her hair was long and blonde, and her beautiful blue eyes really made the entirety of her face. She'd always thought they were her best feature. Though, she did have full, reddish lips which looked plump enough if she puckered them just the right way. "You'll do, I suppose," she told her reflection. Then, blushing despite the fact she was alone, she dropped her robe as well, assessing the rest of her. Slim, flat tummy and flat chest. Well, not completely flat, she supposed. Maybe a handful each, but hardly the eye-catchers required to turn heads. She briefly toyed with the idea of changing that fact too, but she immediately dismissed the thought. She didn't think she could ever do something quite as bold as that. In any case, all there was left to do today before heading out was to shower, and then she would be on her way. She had hired someone to drive her out to her cabin, and then she was going to go completely off the grid. Nobody would see or hear from her for the next 2 months, with the possible exception of an editor if she finished writing a book at all during that time. Which, given her current habit of staying home to hide, she might very well manage to do. About an hour later, clean, clothed, and totally nervous, Amelia answered the door when the driver knocked. She stepped awkwardly aside as she indicated the baggage she intended to bring along, and the guy wordlessly grabbed up a few of the bags. Not wanting to wait for him to come back for the other 3 bags, Amelia grabbed those as well, pausing to lock her apartment door before following him down the stairs. "So, you're off to the mountains for a couple of months, huh?" he asked as he tossed her bags into the back of the van. Yes, she nodded, rubbing her palms over the arms of her sweater. "I've never been." "You live in Maine, and you've never been to the mountains?" he scoffed. "Well, I've lived here 4 years," she explained. "I lived in Chicago before that." "No, I haven't really been much of anywhere. I just flew here to Portland on a plane and started teaching classes. That's about it." "Well, I could see why you might want to go then," he nodded as he opened the passenger door so she could get in. "I'll get you there in one piece." "Thank you," she said. The guy got into the driver's seat and closed his door, pulling on his seatbelt at about the same time as Amelia did, which made her blush slightly and wait for his hand to move aside before she clicked in her own belt. "So, I imagine dispatch told you this drive can take a few hours?" he asked. "The traffic seems to be doing good, but either way it'll be over 3 hours, so you may want to lie back and take a nap." "What are you, kidding?" she protested. "And miss all the greenery going by?" "Suit yourself," he chuckled. "Yes, sir, that's exactly what I intend to do." Despite her resolve to do otherwise, Amelia finally dozed off after a couple of hours. However, she was awake just in time to catch plenty of views as they approached Moosehead Lake itself. The greenery overpowered everything else, in fact. There was a great deal more of it than there was anything else to look at, including buildings. "Almost there now," said the driver with a smile, which she sleepily returned. "I think you're going to like it out here. I can tell about these things." "Really?" she smirked. "How so?" "I don't know, just do," he shrugged. "Here's the place. Now, are you going to need supplies before I just leave you to it?" "Oh, no, I guess the family in the next cabin over is helping me out with all of that," Amelia shrugged. "Thanks for asking, though." "Well, sure," he grinned. "I wouldn't want to leave you out here on your own, with no idea how to manage. The wild things would get you for sure if I did that." "Wild things?" "Yeah, you know, like wolves, bears, and coyotes," he explained. "Things that would love nothing better than to have you for lunch. Last thing we need in these parts is another incident like that last one. You need to take care of yourself." "Wait, what incident?" "Oh, that's right, it isn't likely to have been on the news," he scoffed. "Family came out here last year and went missing, nobody has seen them since. I wouldn't want to see something like that happen to a nice girl like you, that's all. I think the coyotes must have got em. But listen to me, scaring you senseless just as I'm about to go." "Sorry, ma'am." "You be sure and keep that number they gave you, and let us know when you want to return to the city, okay?" "Yeah, I will," Amelia agreed. He was right, his words had made her a bit jumpy, but she was determined to persevere. Besides, there were no refunds. The guy with the brochure had made that perfectly clear. No matter what she decided to do, her money was already spent. "Well then, thanks a lot," she said to the driver. "I guess I'll head in and decide what to do first. Be careful driving back, okay?" "Will do, little lady," he said with a nod, and then he was gone. Amelia was completely alone in front of some cabin in the middle of the wilderness. The senses of elation and dread mingled within her as she fit the key into the lock and opened the door. Cobwebs and dust made her cough, and her first order of business became perfectly clear. She grumbled and shook her head, saying, "Wow. That's what I get for renting an old, abandoned cabin. I sure hope this place comes with a feather duster and a garbage can." Amelia was still working on the mess sometime later when she heard a loud creak as the front door opened. She startled and went to see what had happened, and found a young woman standing in the living room. "Oh, hello," she said. "I didn't realize anybody would be looking for me just yet. Sorry if I scared you, but I was told to expect you here at least 2 hours ago, and I still hadn't heard if you'd arrived, so I thought I'd come find out for myself," said her visitor with a sweet smile. "I'm Judy Bench, one of the daughters from next door. I'm supposed to help you get supplies and stuff at Harper's store. If you're ready to go?" "Yeah, sure," Amelia agreed. "I'm just now discovering that when they said bring supplies, they meant I'd be supplying everything. There's not even a broom around here. I never heard of a place without some sort of a broom before." "Don't worry, I know just what you're going to need," Judy smirked. "You're lucky you've got me to help you instead of my sister Ashley. She's pretty useless." "Not me, though. I know lots of stuff about everything around here." "Glad to hear it," Amelia said with a smile, and the two of them headed out and got into Judy's car. Rather than heading down to the little town of Greenville as expected, Judy drove further up the road and pulled in at a very small store hidden among the trees. "This is Harper's store," Judy explained when they pulled up in the little driveway. "The only people who use it are the folks staying in the cabins up here, since most folks would find it out of their way. Plus, not everybody here gets to use this store since Harper is very picky about who comes in the door. The Harpers are a little weird, but as long as you're nice to them, I'm sure there won't be any problem." "I'll just let you do the talking," said Amelia. Now that she knew these people were about to be judging her, she wished they could just go down into Greenville and use the regular store instead. She didn't want any trouble out here, especially not on her very first day. "Don't look so worried, Amelia, I'm sure they're not going to bite," Judy laughed when she saw her face. "Nathan Harper's a bit strange, but I'm sure he'll take to you just fine. Besides, the owners of these cabins are the only thing keeping his little store in business. I'm sure he'll go out of his way to be nice." As they got out of the car, Amelia took a moment to examine the appearance of the establishment they were about to enter. In the middle of the entrance was a pair of moose antlers so huge she wasn't even sure they'd be able to get inside. They did, of course, only to discover about 20 other mounted heads and so many furs lining the walls that Amelia was worried about finding hairs in any food she bought there. "This place looks like a reject from the Psycho Beaver Asylum," she whispered into Judy's ear. The girl cast her a horrified look. "Don't let Mr. Harper hear you say that," she warned. "It's such a pain to drive all the way to the other store when this one's right here. You don't want to get banned and have to do that all the time." "Oh, sure," she nodded, zipping her lips and throwing away the key. The two women browsed through the store leisurely, selecting all the things that Amelia was likely to need and gathering them into a couple of carts before they approached the sullen-looking man who stood watching them from behind the counter. Amelia couldn't get over how weird the guy looked either. He was tall and skinny, almost gaunt in his appearance. He had dark circles under his eyes and a hungry look on his face, like somebody had forgotten to feed him anything for the last 2 weeks. His mouth seemed slightly misshapen, with jagged, rotting teeth inside. The guy really gave her the creeps. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harper," said Judy politely when they stepped up to set everything on the counter. "Miss Bench, a pleasure to see you as always," he said with a decidedly Puritan-sounding accent. "And you must be the new girl that rented the old Henderson cabin. Miss Fryer, is it?" It must have cost you a pretty penny to get that place for 2 whole months to yourself. I wonder how you managed to pull it off. Oh, yes, that's me, Amelia Fryer, she said with a slight blush. Actually, I inherited a large sum of money when my parents were killed in a car accident, and it's just been sitting in the bank for the last 4 years, so I thought maybe I should put it to some good use. I'm going to write a book while I'm here. That's a mighty fine idea, he said with a nod of approval. I hope you won't be disturbed by any bears while you're trying to accomplish your goal. Bears, sir? She asked. Yes, bears, he said, wrinkling his nose. Most bears in these parts steer clear of humans, especially out by the campgrounds and cabins and such, but sometimes they might come in for food. Careless tourists forget to cover their garbage, or leave food out for them to find. If a bear thinks it can get a better meal among humans, there'll be hell to pay when somebody gets hurt as a result. So you be sure to cover your trash, Miss Fryer. I wouldn't want to see those bears pestering you. Thank you for the advice, Mr. Harper, she said with a smile. I shall follow it to the letter, I can assure you. That's good, he said, and smiled creepily at her. Amelia had to suppress a shudder as she paid for her purchases, and the 2 women wheeled them out to Judy's car. Well, wasn't that a freak show, Amelia said as they got into the car and headed for home again. The rest of the family's somewhat better, I promise, Judy said with a smirk. He has 3 sons. I guess his wife must have died a long time ago, since I've never seen him with anyone since I've known him. I guess they own a bunch of land somewhere in these parts. Don't worry, you'll get used to him after a while. Yeah, I suppose you're right, Amelia agreed with a nod. But Harper sure is a creepy guy, and obviously a hunting fanatic besides. I bet he's real fun at socials, right? I wouldn't know about him, but his sons are kind of cute anyway, Judy smiled. I wouldn't mind catching the eye of a mountain man, even if it was one of them. Amelia smirked. What about mountain men, she wanted to know. Aren't they pretty much just muscle-bound guys with below-average intelligence? You don't know much about mountain men, do you? Judy laughed. They're not all like that. Sure, they all have bulging muscles since they work jobs that require you to use them, but there's plenty of them who also took the time to study, too. And believe me, you need to have at least half a brain to know where to cut the tree if you don't want it to fall the wrong direction. Also, you need to know where the animals are going to hide if you want to trap or hunt them. Granted, they don't waste a lot of time on Socrates or Aristotle, but they're plenty smart about what really matters. Well, it sounds like your mind is set on having one, that's for sure, Amelia chuckled. So, what are you doing tomorrow? Judy asked her then. The way I figure it, you're up here to get your feet wet, so to speak, right? So tomorrow, we go down to the lake and get you wet literally. It's about a 5-minute walk down, but I'm sure you'll enjoy yourself. Just remember to stick to the trail and I'll meet you down by the docks at 10. Don't be late, okay? We're getting a boat. Oh, I'm not sure I want to go tomorrow, Amelia said. I've still got a lot of cleaning to do, and I wanted to start the first chapter on my book. Don't be a stick in the mud, Judy complained. The housework isn't going anywhere, and neither is your book. Write that thing at night and have fun in the sunshine. You only get to live once. You know what, you're right, Amelia said with a nod. I've been living my life under a rock, and I came out here to change that. What good would it have done to come out here if I just keep right on doing the same thing I was doing already? No good at all, Judy chuckled. Now, what are you going to wear? I'll help you bring in all this stuff and we can sort out your clothes and put them away. If you intend to be social, the first thing you need to organize is your clothes. Well, that's true, Amelia agreed. But don't you think we should put away the food first? Judy chuckled. Of course we should, she told her, and they did. After the food was properly stored, they went into the little bedroom Amelia had chosen to use and tossed every piece of luggage right in the middle of the bed. One bag, a smaller one, was filled with nothing but her undergarments, and Amelia snatched at it as Judy opened it up. You don't really need to look at those, she said with a blush. Apparently I do, Judy told her. Where did you get these panties, your grandmother? They're not that bad, Amelia protested. Lucky for you we shopped before we came out here, and you and I look like we're about the same size, Judy commented dryly. I'll give you some of mine. Consider it a contribution to your future. It's only obvious what you've done with the past, but there's still time to rescue you from your demise. Judy, come on, she protested. Amelia, look at you, she said. Dowdy clothes and granny panties? Have you ever even had a man at all? Sure, she said, blushing even more. Maybe once or twice. You're not even sure if it was once or twice, she laughed. Girl, we have got to get you a man. A nice, bulky, really hot mountain man, preferably one who likes more than just missionary style, so you can find out how the other half lives. Judy! Amelia gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. But even though she was completely scandalized, she knew that her new friend was right. She was deplorable when it came to men. She'd only ever been with her high school sweetheart, and they were only intimate twice. After that, it was all just about dating, getting to know the guys. But guys these days expected sex. Obviously, since Sam didn't get sex from Amelia, he didn't consider her anything but a friend, and he'd gotten sex somewhere else. She could take away a valuable lesson from that, and stop being such a prude. Sure, her parents raised her to be a good girl, but that was like sentencing her to be single forever. If she wanted a chance at happiness, she needed to get with the modern times. Here you are, said Judy as she laid out the swimsuit and cover Amelia had bought for the trip. The one ensemble that you should wear tomorrow. This ought to attract some guys. Come down to the beach at 10. Have a good night. Thanks, Judy, you've been a real help, Amelia said, and gave her a hug goodbye.
Hey there. Did you know that we've other hot romances like this that we want to release? But we need your help. Subscribing shows us that you're part of our journey and allows us to make more of these stories at a higher quality. So please, my queen, subscribe to the Romancely YouTube channel now. Thanks. Now back to your story. Chapter 2. Amelia was wearing a one-piece, pale blue swimsuit with a matching robe and water socks. She had her long, golden curls pulled back into a ponytail that hung neatly down her back to just past her shoulder blades. And she was feeling as self-conscious as possible about it. It was 9:30 in the morning, and she was standing frozen near her front door despite her best efforts to force herself to step outside. This is so stupid, she muttered with a shake of her head. Just do it already. With one foot at a time and a lot of effort, she managed to step out the door. Her heart pounded violently at the thought that her mother would turn over in her grave if she saw what she had on. But she reminded herself that she was a grown woman and she wanted a man. She surely wasn't likely to get noticed wearing knee-length bloomers and a floppy shirt that practically covered her arms. She walked briskly down the path, intent on reaching the water and diving in before anybody caught sight of her shapely legs or her nicely rounded backside. For a moment she could hear her father's voice at the back of her head joining her mother in calling her Jezebel, but she pushed all of that out and replaced it with positive affirmations instead. I look awesome. I look beautiful. I might meet the man of my dreams today. The man of her dreams? What did that look like exactly? Well, somebody who wanted to have sex with her sounded like a good start. It was only natural she wanted that since her libido had kicked into overdrive recently. Now that she realized she was completely single and she had no other obligations right this moment other than to herself. And it was about time, too, her body screamed in reply. coming out of her reverie as she walked along a dirt path that eventually sloped down to the beach below. Amelia became aware of the songbirds flittering about in the trees, squirrels and rabbits scurrying from her path, and the rather large tree that dominated a huge portion of the forest beyond. It had a skull and crossbones spray-painted onto it along with the words "Keep out." "No problem," she commented dryly as she skirted past and continued on her way. The place gave her the creeps, making her feel like someone was watching her, and she checked more than once to make sure she was still alone. Still just her and forest creatures. No nefarious men exuding with bad intent. She was just being paranoid. As she broke free of the trees, Amelia could see the vast expanse of water that was Moosehead Lake before her, sparkling blue in the light of the morning sun. Up here in the area known as the Birch Street Cabins, there were 20 homes that lined the water itself, and about just as many more which ranged the other side of the road. Her cabin was one of the latter. She skimmed the beach with her eyes, seeing about 100 people there. She finally spotted Judy and 4 other women who looked almost identical to her. They were all standing around by a dock where a big sailboat was currently moored. Its sails were currently tied shut, waiting for them to board. Dutifully, Amelia picked her way across the beach and went to join them, plastering a big smile on her face. She carefully avoided all the other people on the beach as she went, blushing whenever she made eye contact with any of them. She chastised herself for it as she did so, but she still couldn't seem to convince her brain she was there to be sociable. Maybe she really should just stick to writing the book if this was how it was going to be. "Oh my, Judy, you're right," said one of the women who stood waiting with her. "She is quite pretty. I wonder if any of these men will notice us at all with her around." Amelia blushed again as she stopped in front of them. She asked, "What is it with your family and talking about finding men? Anyway, is that all your trip here is about?" "Pretty much," said yet another one of them with a chuckle. "Hi, I'm Annie. Amelia Fryer," she replied, shaking her hand. "Pleased to meet you," Judy said. "These are my sisters and mother, Annie, Kathy, Mary, and Ashley." "Wait, one of these women is you mother?" Amelia asked, looking each of them over curiously but unable to spot the older one. "I have no idea which of you it is." "It's me," said Annie with a chuckle. "Can you believe I'm actually 47? No way. You don't look a day over 30. Amelia grinned. "And anyway, I think with all you brunettes around, a blonde like me probably won't get any attention at all. Guess that plan is dead in the water." "What plan?" asked Annie with interest. "Well, based on everything she's told me about herself and her dating life, I've determined that poor Amelia's practically a virgin." Judy chuckled. "Plus, the last guy she was dating didn't even know she thought they were a couple at all, if you can believe that. So, she and I have decided it's high time she learned to live a little. Right, Amelia?" Yeah," she agreed shyly. "I did kind of rent the cabin with the idea of meeting somebody special in mind. My last year working as a teacher at a private school was terrible, and I really want to change. It's so beautiful out here, too. I wish I could afford to stay a lot longer. Of course, eventually I'll have to go back where the jobs are, since I doubt there's one around here that would pay enough." "Wow, it's so hard to believe you're single, looking at you," said Annie. "You're just such a cute girl. Well, in any case, we've rented this boat, and eventually we're going to have to take it back to town to drop it off after we've had our fun. Maybe we could grab something to eat in Greenville before heading back. I personally will have to drive the car back, but you girls could easily walk home. You're bound to see somebody interesting on the way back if you do. So, you girls just walk up the road checking out guys all along the way or something. Why do you make it sound like I'd be looking almost the same as a grocery display?" Amelia chuckled. "In a way, you are," Annie laughed. "This place is crawling with hunky guys if you know where to look for them. They mostly do things just outside their cabins and hope to see women walk by, too. It's kind of like a game around here that the young people play. You get to see them all day, every day if you want to, so you should be able to take your pick." "I wouldn't exactly say crawling, mother dear," Judy corrected her with a little frown. "There's barely even 1,000 guys in the entire area, at least not local ones. And who wants to hook up with some tourist when they won't be around long enough to make it worth the time. No, it's the permanent residents you're going to want to ogle, Amelia, especially if you're hoping to stay. Wow, you really have done some homework, haven't you? Amelia laughed. What more could a school teacher ask for? Well, other than a school, of course. You have to understand, Amelia. We've been coming here every year since I was 4, Judy explained. It's only natural that I would have picked up a lot of details in that amount of time. Well, enough about this topic for now, said Annie then. How about we get into this boat, hit the middle of the pond, and dive off the end? Now that's one thing I can do, Amelia grinned. They spent the greater part of the afternoon playing in the water, and eventually sailed the boat south and checked it back in at a little marina just outside of town. Amelia got her first look at the little town of Greenville as they stopped off in a small restaurant and ordered a meal. Some people seemed to be staring in their direction, and she got the feeling it was her they were looking at, but she was sure they were just curious about the new girl. In a small town like this one, it was likely they knew who she was and they were just trying to figure her out, why she was there and whether or not she'd fit in. Amelia was actually a bit curious about that herself. It was so beautiful and peaceful there. She was already longing to stay. After they ate their food, just as previously discussed, Annie took the car home, leaving Amelia and the 4 bench women to do as they pleased. But since it was only 4 in the afternoon, none of them particularly wanted to head back home. It's too early to go to the bar, Kathy pointed out. Only the old guys would be in there right now. They'd love to have us, but I doubt we'd be as happy to have them. Mary giggled at this. I know I'm not looking for an old guy myself, she replied. Besides, whoever is there now must not like the beach. Well, I have the most perfect idea ever. We have absolutely got to take Amelia shopping for some better clothes, Judy announced, making all her sisters giggle. Are they really that bad? Asked Kathy with a smirk. They look like they were designed for a circumspect night at home in the 50s or something, Judy announced decisively. No, they don't, Amelia protested, her cheeks flaming. She gave it some thought, however, and had to add, they were all the rage back in the 80s. They all laughed, and Amelia flushed as she shook her head, laughing right along with them. And so a shopping spree ensued. Amelia was very thankful for their help when it came to picking out stylish clothing. If not for them, she might have opted to get herself a toga and call it good. Finished shopping, they followed one of the roads that led towards their cabins. They stopped frequently to admire the views, especially if those views involved seemingly unattached men basking in the sunshine. I have to admit, it really is kind of like going grocery shopping, Amelia said when they were between houses. That last batch of guys looked pretty good from a distance. But what good is it doing us to just look at these guys if we don't even talk to any of them? Well, we were trying to let you get used to things first, said Mary with a smirk. You know, get a lay of the land, so to speak. Figure out which of the guys you'd actually want to talk to first, and then find a way to do it next time. I don't know. That seems a bit pointless, Amelia sighed. I mean, is this all you guys do each day around here? It's no wonder none of you has a boyfriend if you do. Just give it a few days, Judy chuckled. It'll grow on you. 3 days in a row, Amelia and the bench women went boating during the day, ate a late lunch, and then the daughters walked up a different road each time to get back to their cabins. On the 3rd day, they went up Birch Street so they could actually see a bit more of the water along the way as well as the occupants of the cabins. Okay, a lot of these houses up in this section are private residences, Judy said, pointing up ahead of them. This is the section you're going to want to pay more attention to, since these are the guys who are not leaving anytime soon. So, Amelia, do you think you've gotten up the courage to say hello to anybody yet? No way, I'd be totally afraid to try, Amelia said, holding up her hands as if to ward off the very thought. But then again, I doubt I ever will have that much courage, to tell you the truth. I was hoping maybe some of them would say hello to us instead. I know, let's compromise, said Kathy brightly. We will smile and wave at the next group of guys we see. If they like us, they should probably come over and talk to us, right? This is hopeless, Amelia muttered. It's like the blind leading the blind. Yeah, you do have a point, Judy agreed. Maybe we should throw a beach party or something. Guys always seem to crash those. Wait, wait, I just realized something, said Ashley excitedly. We're getting close to that house. What do you mean? Asked Amelia. The one with the really cute guys who have been living there for years, said Ashley with a knowing smile. They're probably the hottest two guys in the whole town, but they never seem to talk to us, though. We'd probably just be wasting our time waving at them. Don't be such a naysayer, Ash, Judy complained. This time might be different now that we've got a blonde in our group. You work it now, Amelia. Let's see if we can get those fish to bite. You are so terrible, Amelia protested. Secretly, the thought of getting some guys that never talked to them before to do it now just because of her sounded really fun. She could use the ego boost such an accomplishment would give her. Judy and her sisters had already begun to wave. Blushing hotly, Amelia looked to see exactly who it was they were waving at. The two shirtless men appeared to be unloading logs from the back of a pickup truck and chopping them with an axe. When they saw the group of women waving at them, they stopped and smiled at each other, stepping over to say hello. Hey there, I recognize all of you, but who is this pretty lady? Asked the shorter of the two. You're not from around here, but I don't think you're a run-of-the-mill tourist either. Am I right? I'm Joe, by the way. Joe West. Hello, Mr. West. Amelia answered shyly as she shook his hand. Don't call me Mr. West. Mr. West was my father. He chuckled. I know what you're thinking. It's a cheesy line, but true nonetheless. Joe, then? She smirked. I'm Amelia. I'm Skylar, said the taller man with a grin. Hi, Skylar, she said, grinning back. The two men really were just as hot as she'd been led to believe. Joe was slightly shorter, and his hair was more of a golden brown, while Skylar was a bit taller and darker, but both of them were definitely muscle-bound and gorgeous. Amelia couldn't help but notice, even though her inner critic chastised her for being so superficial. She told it to shut up and let her have some fun for once. So, how long are you going to be in town, Amelia? Joe wanted to know. It was obvious by his tone and the casual way he stood close to her that he was extremely interested in her reply. Oh, I've paid for the old Henderson place for 2 whole months, she explained. I was hoping to find time to write a book while I'm here. It's way too stressful to write back in Portland, especially during the school year since I'm a teacher at a private school there. I really wish I had known what it would be like before I chose that career. What do you mean? Asked Skylar curiously as he stepped closer as well. A swarm of butterflies launched in Amelia's belly as she stood between the two attentive men. I had no idea it would be such a stressful, thankless job, she admitted. I was stupid to assume just because I was so eager to learn, that meant every other kid is too. But I guess that's just not true. Sounds like what you need is a real change of pace. Joe laughed. Who knows? Maybe a couple months of mountain life might make you want to become a permanent resident. I couldn't possibly do that without one heck of an income boost, Amelia pointed out. You have no idea how much of my inheritance money I just spent for this little retreat. Then I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for here, Skylar added, giving her shoulder a little squeeze. And to help you out on that journey, what do you say we take you girls out for a night on the town? Our treat. What? Wait, gasped Ashley. What's up with that, Joe? You've never wanted to take any of us anywhere before. Well, considering you were 10 the year we met, imp, I think you can understand how a pair of teenage boys who had only just went in on a house together might have been a bit more reluctant to invite you out. Don't you think? Joe said. I can only imagine what your mother would have said about it back then. Yeah, I guess that's true, she shrugged. Joe laughed at her expression, and then cast Amelia a look of hopeful inquiry. What do you say, Amelia? Do you want to go? I guess I could go along. Maybe find out a bit more about the place, she conceded. I surely won't mind having such handsome tour guides, but obviously I'd have to put away all these things I bought first and change into some sort of evening attire. That is, if any of you girls want to go. I probably shouldn't go alone since we've only just met. Sure, we'll all go, said Judy excitedly. Anything to get you started off on the right foot, Amelia. No, Judy, we don't all want to go, said Kathy tiredly. I just want to go home, take a bath, and relax. And I want to read the book I just bought. added Mary. I'll go, said Ashley, her eyes gazing at Joe dreamily. Great. Then how about we give you girls a lift back over to your cabins so you can get ready? Asked Joe with a smile. We can use my delivery van. It has enough room for everyone, but you'll have to sit on the floor because it only has a driver's seat installed. Yeah, we could do that, Judy agreed, smiling at the others encouragingly. Her sisters mostly scowled except for Ashley. She and Amelia smiled agreeably instead. I'll go ahead and drive the car down to the pub, Skylar said then. It doesn't make sense to cram me in there as well. All right, sounds good. Joe agreed as he led the women over to the van. We'll see you soon then. I call shotgun, said Ashley. There's no seat to call, silly, Judy reminded her. So what, I can still sit there, she pointed out. They all climbed into the vehicle, getting comfortable on the floor, and then Joe started the engine and drove them back to the bench cabin, where all of those girls piled out. Amelia said, I could just walk across from here and save you driving for 1 minute, don't you think? But I want to drive, said Joe with a smirk. Something in the way he said this made Amelia blush, but she settled back into a seated position and let him do it. About half a minute later he said, Okay, here we are. I'll wait out here if you want me to. Sure, she said. I won't be long. I already know what I'd like to wear since I just bought it today anyway. Now I won't even have to put it away. That's convenient, he agreed with a chuckle. I can't wait to see you in it, whatever it is. A cute dress, she supplied as she scooted to the door and swung it open. I'll be right back. Just remember when you put on what goes underneath that you're crawling around on this floor, he teased her. Unless, of course, you don't mind me seeing it? Amelia's eyes widened at the thought, and she blushed. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Maybe I should wear the shorts instead. Okay, then, he chuckled. See you soon. Amelia practically sprinted inside and headed for her bedroom door. Her heart raced unaccountably fast for the action, and she was fairly certain that the handsome man waiting for her must be the cause. He had a gorgeous smile and he was funny, too. She had a feeling this night would be fun.
Chapter 3. Judy and Ashley showed up at the van just about the same time that Amelia stepped out her front door. The three women smiled at each other excitedly as they got in, with Amelia shutting the door behind them. Since Ashley was sitting up front, Amelia decided to ask Judy more about herself rather than talk to their handsome driver. So, I heard Joe say he's known Ashley since she was 10, she asked curiously. How old is she now? 21, said Judy with a smirk. And Joe must be well aware of it, too, since he's never asked her anywhere until now. He probably hasn't spoken to Ashley because she was too young to go out to the kinds of places he would probably want to take her. But unfortunately it's probably you who inspired this outing, rather than her. I hope she's aware of that fact, since she tends to be too sensitive for her own good. Something tells me maybe I should pay more attention to Skylar then? Amelia asked uncertainly, making sure Joe couldn't hear what she was saying. Hey now, what are you two talking about back there? Joe teased as he looked in the rear view mirror. You're not talking about how cute I am, are you? Ashley would love to get in on that conversation if you are. Wow, somebody sure got a swelled head, Amelia commented dryly. Maybe, he laughed, grinning suggestively at the thought. But really, I just know how females can be when they put their heads together, and I'm the only guy in here. Unless of course you two were talking about Skylar instead? We weren't talking about either one, Amelia protested. I was just asking how old Ashley is now. Smirking even more, Joe replied, so what you're really saying is that you want to know how old I am, right? I never Amelia began, then stopped herself. He wasn't wrong about that, at least. She was more interested in his age than the age of Judy's younger sister. Fine, then. How old are you, Joe? Glad you asked, he chuckled. I've just turned 29 this week. Oh. Well, happy birthday then, she said. My birthday is next month. Should I ask the lady her upcoming age? He grinned. They came to a stop just as he said this, and she looked curiously out the window to discover they'd reached the highway that would take them into town. You would ask a lady her age? She chuckled. You are a bold man, Joe West. I'll be 28. Well, it makes more sense now, then, he replied. What makes more sense? She asked. Your sudden desire to make a change, he shrugged. That is why you came out here, isn't it? You have get away from it all written all over you. Yeah, I guess so, she agreed. Too bad it's only a temporary reprieve. You never can tell, he commented dryly. This place has a way of selecting its residents whether they expect it to or not. Joe pulled into the parking lot of a little bar and grill that Amelia had spotted earlier in the day. The place looked warm and inviting, and the people who were seated at a little table just outside the door were engaged in a lively discussion of some kind. However, when they spotted the new arrivals, they stopped what they were doing to include them as well. Hey, Joe, we just saw Skylar go in a few minutes ago, so we thought you might be along soon, said the man in a friendly tone when they were all out of the van and heading for the door. Who are your friends? A couple of the bench girls, and their newest neighbor, said Joe with a smile. Amelia's never been to Greenville before, so Skylar and I offered to show her the ropes tonight. You know there's a beach party tomorrow, right? He asked as he stepped over and extended a hand to Amelia. She shook it as he said, Dale Carter, ma'am. And might I say it'll be a pleasure to have such a pretty lady in our midst? Thanks, she answered shyly. You can say that all you want. You old smoothie, Joe scoffed good-naturedly. The four of them stepped through the door to the lounge. The sound of the man's laughter followed behind them, making Amelia smirk. They soon spotted Skylar sitting at a table for 6, waiting for them. In one corner of the bar was a huge television which he watched with interest. Amelia noticed that it was tuned into a hunting show. Hi, Skylar, said Amelia with a grin, making sure to inflect the words exactly the same way she had the first time she'd said them. Hello, Amelia, he said with a smirk. Would you like a drink? I'm not much of a drinker, she admitted as she came and sat down in the chair beside his. What have you got there? Is that white wine? Yeah, it's pretty good, he said. Have a taste. I promise I don't have cooties. Blushing slightly, she tilted her head to meet his glass when he brought it to her lips, dutifully taking a little sip. It's not bad, she said with a smile. Sweeter than I thought it would be. Skylar nodded and held up a hand to get the waitress' attention. Hey, there, what can I do for you? She asked as she looked Amelia over. You must be the new girl out at the Henderson cabin. Yes, I am, she said. Did you want some white wine too, or something else? Asked Skylar. The wine is good, Amelia answered. And a water as well, please. So you know, we do have a 2-drink minimum around here, said the waitress. Skylar raised a brow at her, and she added, but I suppose that is 2 drinks, isn't it? Silly me. I'll just go get them for you right away. Amelia caught the look Skylar had given the girl, like he was giving her some sort of a warning, but she didn't care to discover what it meant. Instead, she chose to simply enjoy the company and not speculate on small-town drama. Judy's eyes also followed the waitress as she walked away. Conspiratorially, she leaned across the table to say, That's Nathan Harper's only daughter, Ruth. She can be a real pain if she wants to be, so you should probably be nice to her. I'm amazed she backed off on the 2-drink thing so easily. I wonder if she and Skylar have had a run-in before this. We have, actually, Skylar confirmed, surprising Judy with his ability to hear her over the music and the television. Out at the hunting lodge where I work. She used to work there until her attitude landed her with a pink slip. If there's one thing they don't tolerate out there, it's employees badgering the customers. So she knows better than to mess with me. What did you do to her? Judy wanted to know. Bested her in a contest, I guess you'd say, Skylar shrugged. Amelia could tell by the look on his face that the answer was intentionally vague, but it was obvious the man didn't want to say much more about it, so they didn't pry. Oh great, said Joe as he looked across the room. The Harper brothers are here. Yes, they are, Skylar agreed, his deep brown eyes alight with caution. I doubt they'll cause any trouble right now, though. They wouldn't want to get their sister fired from this job, too. They need the income too much after their father had to pay that huge fine last year. I take it you and the Harpers don't get along? Asked Amelia. Not in particular, Joe said with a nod. It's mostly them causing the trouble and us stopping it, truth be told. We've sort of made it our mission in life to keep them from harming folks around these parts, if you take my meaning. They seem to think they've got a right to boss everyone around, and we disagree. Judy rolled her eyes. Are they really all that bad? I mean, sure Deke and Zach are a couple of jerks, but not Seth. He doesn't seem nearly as bad as the others. Besides, causing a bit of trouble for folks here and there is just boys being boys. Somebody's crushing on a certain Harper boy pretty hard, aren't they? Joe chuckled. Well, he's right over there, Miss Bench. Why don't you go ask him to dance? At least if his attention is fixed on you, he's less likely to impose it someplace else. Funny, Judy grumbled. But you know what, I think I just might do that. Careful of the other two if you do, Joe warned her as she stepped away. Folks in these parts really like to share. Share? Amelia mouthed, her eyebrows shooting up at the thought. Yeah, you know, as in more than one partner? Joe teased her, his eyes sparkling with interest at the concept in a way that shot heat straight down to her loins. Her mind immediately got the mental image of sharing with these two, and her cheeks suffused with red-hot heat as her pulse went wild. She was able to visualize that way too easily for her own good. I see, she said with a nod. The television suddenly became very interesting as she glued her eyes to it. It was a fishing show, and the guy had just caught one. Maybe you'd like to dance, too? Joe asked her then. Amelia looked at him again, smiling. I think I'd like to, she agreed, and Joe stepped around to her side of the table to take her hand and lead her onto the floor. Right that moment, a slow song started to play, and they smirked at each other as they moved into each other's arms and began to sway. Good old Dale, Joe said. He really knows how to look after his friends. You think he did it on purpose? Amelia asked with a chuckle. Of course he did, he told her. I'd do the same for him. They returned to their seats at the table. Joe gave her hand a little squeeze before he returned to his chair, and Amelia cast him a little grin. She had liked being in his arms very much. Ashley watched this entire exchange with a little frown, then she stood up and stalked away, headed for the bathroom. By the way she did it, Amelia suspected she was jealous and was headed off to seethe. However, since she was still reeling on a level that seemed almost invigorating, Amelia couldn't find it within herself to particularly care. Skylar, who was still seated in the chair by her side, leaned forward and said into her ear, So, you like dancing? Do you like fishing too? I don't know, actually, she admitted. I've never been. Would you like to try it? He wanted to know. We're going to need a few fish for the beach party tomorrow, but they are easier to catch in the early morning at the smaller lake. If you want to go with me, we'd have to leave around 3. Sure, why not, she answered, smiling back at him. Don't oversleep then, he smirked as he leaned closer still. His lips brushed her ear as he added, you wouldn't want me to have to come into your bedroom to wake you up, would you? Amelia's libido kicked into overdrive. The trouble was, she couldn't make up her mind which of the two men had done the kicking. Joe, with his threesome talk and conveniently timed slow dancing, or Skylar when he had leaned in, his hot breath and suggestive words flaying her neck and ear with searing heat. She was suddenly so wet between her thighs she needed to go to the restroom just to dry herself off. Which was a completely new experience for her, to say the least. She hadn't ever found one man who could do that to her, and now all of a sudden she had suddenly found two. Interesting. Excuse me, you too, won't you? She said as she got to her feet. I need to find the little girl's room myself now. And check on Ashley, since Judy is clearly too busy dancing with Seth Harper to do it herself. Judy has always been a bit foolish, Skylar conceded. I'm sure that Ashley will be just fine, Joe added. Yeah, no doubt, Amelia agreed, and she felt an unaccountable pang of jealousy course through her when she heard him speaking another woman's name. She shrugged off the sensation and went into the bathroom. Ashley was sitting in one of the stalls with the door hanging wide open. She'd gotten a bottle of scotch from somewhere which she was currently drinking with unreserved abandon. What are you doing? Amelia asked, shaking her head at her foolishness. Getting totally hammered, of course. Joe really seems to like you, huh? She asked, her words slurred as she sat forward on the toilet and set the bottle on the floor. I finally get him to pay attention to me, but it isn't me he's paying attention to at all. I guess those are the breaks, right? Don't you think you're overreacting, Ashley? Amelia wanted to know. We were only dancing. Of course I'm overreacting, she said. With him, everything I have ever felt is an overreaction, yeah? And I've finally realized he'll just never feel that way too. And there's nothing I can do to change that. I've been an idiot all this time thinking maybe we would have a someday, but it's never gonna happen. And you're getting all this just from the fact he and I had a slightly flirty conversation? Amelia asked curiously. Well, I have to admit to you, I liked it. Very much. I'm not going to lie about that. I enjoyed dancing with him, too. I think I'm going to just go home, she sighed. Coming here was a really bad idea. And besides, Judy doesn't look like she's going to come home until much later if at all. You can't do that in your condition, Amelia pointed out. We should ask Joe or Skylar to bring you back. Maybe it might be better if you asked Skylar considering your current state of emotions. Yeah, you're probably right, she agreed. Will you ask him for me? I feel too stupid to do it myself right now. Of course I will, Amelia agreed. A good night of sleep and you should be feeling a whole lot better. Yeah, maybe I will, she agreed. Thanks for being so nice to me, Amelia. You're an all-right kind of girl. You must be a great teacher. I wish I could say that I was, she sighed. But after the year I've just been through, I'm more of a neurotic mess. I just can't seem to get through to those kids at all. I desperately needed to get away from that whole mess. So neither one of us has a clue what we're doing, she smirked. Glad I'm not the only one. Come on, let's get out of here, Amelia suggested. I'll get Skylar for you. Coming out of the bathroom, Amelia motioned to Skylar and he stepped over to where she and Ashley stood by the door. Joe watched from across the room as Amelia asked Skylar to take Ashley home. When the two of them left together and Amelia came back over to sit with him, he cast her a curious look. Is he taking her home, then? He asked with a smirk. Yeah, they're going, Amelia confirmed with a nod. I think Ashley has finally realized her girlish crush isn't going to work out. That's good, he nodded. I've been trying to figure out what to do about her for years. I know the feeling, she said. Some of the boys in my school tend to crush on me as well. I find that easy to believe, he told her. Well, if I'm going to go fishing tomorrow morning, we probably shouldn't stay too late either, don't you think? She asked him, trying not to blush. Judy chose that particular moment to bring Seth over. It really is all right, she insisted as he hung back. Come on, Seth. West, he said with a nod. Is Skylar heading out, then? It appears so, Joe replied warily. Why is Ashley leaving? Judy wanted to know. She wasn't feeling well, Amelia said. She wasn't about to tell her she was totally drunk. I've come to let you know, he said. Judy has agreed to let me take her home. I assume there are no objections? Judy can do what she likes, Joe shrugged. Great, I'll see you guys later then, she said, and the two of them left again. I guess that just leaves you and me, Amelia, Joe said with a smirk. Do you want to go home right now, or hang around just a little while longer? Sighing, Amelia replied, not to be a party pooper, but maybe I ought to go home. I'm getting pretty worn out after such a long day. Do you want to stop by the grocery store and get some chocolate? He smirked, and Amelia's jaw dropped. What's that supposed to mean? It's Friday night, and you're going home early and didn't invite me to stay, he pointed out. Sounds like a chocolate kind of a night to me. Oh, really? She smirked. Yup, he replied. Unless of course you decide to invite me. I taste a lot better than chocolate, and you wouldn't run out of your supply. I don't believe we're having this conversation when we only met 3 hours ago, Amelia gasped, still laughing. Would you please take me back to my cabin so I can get a few hours of writing in and catch some sleep before fishing time? Sure, he said innocently. Just putting it out there. I appreciate it, she said. But after what else you've been talking about, I suspect you're just hoping Skylar will look for me in my bed and find you already in it. You might be right, he chuckled. We do like to share things, especially when it comes to pretty women who are in dire need of some fun. Amelia blushed hotly. Okay, we should stop talking now, she told him. Too soon? Joe grinned. He got to his feet and extended his hand. Amelia shyly took it and allowed him to bring her to her feet. He didn't let go as he headed toward the door, and she didn't try to move away from him either. Joe stopped by the store, and Amelia chuckled as she followed him inside. He bought her a chocolate rose and asked if she was missing anything in her kitchen. I don't have any bread, she remembered, and went to grab some. She also bought a couple of 2-liter sodas and some chips. Back in the van, Joe started to drive home. They were quiet for a while, but then he chuckled. Dare I ask why you're laughing now? You like salt better than sweet, he said. So? She smirked. They were outside her cabin now, and Joe reached for her hand, drawing it up to his lips to kiss the back of it. I did just drink a margarita if you'd like a taste, he told her with a little smile. Maybe just for a taste, she conceded, and let him lean over further, take her by the chin, and plant a chaste kiss on her lips. Bemused, she stared into his soft blue eyes from barely an inch away as he held her there for a few moments before he said, you taste pretty good, too. Have fun with Skylar later, will you? And be sure to taste him too. Amelia's eyes popped open, and she quickly moved out of the van, grabbed her groceries, and headed for the door. She couldn't believe they had such a strange conversation. But at the same time, she already knew, in the pit of her stomach, and by the clenching of her woman's core in that special, very sexy way, that she liked it. She liked it very much. Suddenly, the straight-laced literary piece that she'd been planning to write canceled itself in her mind and was replaced by a torrid romance. Before she knew it, she had already been writing for hours, and she was staring at 3 finished chapters and a grandfather clock chiming 12 times. If I hope to get any sleep at all, I'd better do it now, she told herself with a shake of her head, and she went straight into her bedroom, falling on top of the covers and drifting off to sleep within 5 minutes. She forgot to set the alarm.
Chapter 4. Amelia awoke a few hours later to a deep chuckle and the feel of somebody running a hand over her protruding ass. "Skylar, did Joe get you drunk or something?" he asked her as he cocked his head to one side. "No," she said, rolling over and gazing up at his handsome face. "He brought me home so I could get some writing done. I worked so hard I ended up passing out, I guess. You must really want to write that book? Eh?" he surmised. "Or maybe you just wanted me to come into your bedroom." "Oh, both, I'm sure," she chuckled. "Let me go change my clothes real quick, and then we can get going. Or we could stay here for a bit first," he said suggestively. "No, I think it'd be a good idea to take a rain check on that for now," she said softly. "I've never been one to jump into anything head first." Skylar's laugh warmed her nicely as she grabbed some clothes and took them with her into the bathroom, where she quickly put them on. He had left her bedroom and went to sit on the sofa while she was gone. They smiled at each other, and he got up to follow her to the front door, tugging her ponytail along the way. "I like your hair better down," he told her. "I may not have gone fishing yet, but I'm not dumb," she said. "My hair would just be in the way if I left it down." "Yeah, I guess that's true," he agreed. Took a while to drive out to the lake. This was done in companionable silence, and every once in a while Skylar would reach across and run his knuckles along Amelia's knee or thigh, making her blush. "Have you ever been in a boat before, Amelia?" he asked her at one point. "Only once or twice," she said, "but it was when I was quite small before my grandfather passed away." "So he probably took you out on Lake Michigan, right?" he asked with a smile. "Yeah," she nodded. "I didn't live very far from the lake, but my parents weren't really the outdoors type, so after he died I was mostly at home reading books. It's no wonder my folks convinced me I'd make a good teacher." "So it was their idea?" he asked. "Mostly, yeah," she told him. Then her breath caught in her throat. His knuckles were up a bit higher this time, and the touch sent heat into all the right places, but to a most unexpected degree. She felt her nipples tighten into rigid nubs, and she tried not to squirm since the action made them rub deliciously against the fabric. "I like that about you, sweetheart," he said with a smirk. "Like what?" she asked, blushing. "You're so responsive," he said. "You must not be very used to being touched." "Not really," she admitted. "As Judy puts it, I'm practically a virgin." "Nothing wrong with that," he told her, and then added, "We're here now. Let's see how much you enjoy catching our dinner." The two of them got out of the truck and headed for a small dock at the far end of the parking lot. Several boats were tied there along the lake's edge, and Skylar led Amelia to one of the smaller ones. "What is this place?" Amelia wanted to know. "It's part of an exclusive club. This is a small lake the members use for fishing, and just beyond those trees about 3 miles further in is the hunting lodge where I work," he explained. "This is a private property that only members can use, and the boat belongs to me. I only ever use it on this lake, so I just moor it out here all the time." "You leave your boat out here in the middle of nowhere all the time?" Amelia asked curiously. "Don't you worry that somebody else would try to use it?" Smirking and tugging her ponytail again, Skylar replied, "They don't have the keys, sweetheart." "Oh yeah," she said, feeling stupid, but at least Skylar didn't seem to look at her that way. In fact, she rather liked the way he was looking at her right then. His brown eyes alight with something akin to desire. They were standing on the far edge of the dock, and he'd just pulled his key out of his pants pocket. But instead of getting into the boat, Skylar turned and drew her into his arms. She went willingly enough, though she blushed profusely along the way. "If I don't do this before we get into the boat, I'll just drive myself crazy thinking about it all morning." he told her softly as he leaned way down to close the distance between their two heights and pressed his nose to hers. Do what, play Eskimo? She asked sweetly, making him chuckle. I'm going to kiss you, sweetheart, he said with a grin. Wasn't it obvious? No, I hadn't noticed, she lied. I really must be slipping then, he replied. He pressed his lips gently to hers, giving her a brief kiss. This was followed by another kiss, longer and a bit more confident. Amelia put her hands up and around his neck, drawing him closer. He pulled her upwards as well, standing her on her tiptoes as he deepened the kiss. When Amelia sighed softly, he abruptly let go. Why did you stop? She asked, disappointed. Because I didn't think you would like to be ravished on the edge of the lake right up against the side of my boat, he suggested with a smile. Good call, she agreed. Skylar helped Amelia into the little boat, then got in behind her. He started the engine and took them out into the middle of the lake. Their fishing poles were already on board, and he pulled a small box out of his jacket, opening it to reveal some worms he had caught earlier as well. I got these from your yard waiting for you to wake up, he teased her. I didn't have much else to do, so why not? After he baited each of their hooks, he showed Amelia how to cast, and then they sat snuggled together watching the sunrise and waiting for something to bite. Still not a single bite, Amelia sighed about an hour later. You've already caught 3 fish. What am I doing wrong? If you really want a bite, I could give you one. Skylar chuckled as he bent and started to nibble on her ear. We are so not trying that sort of thing in a boat in the middle of a lake, she scolded him. The last thing I want to do is tip over this fancy boat of yours. Chuckling secretively, he replied, Oh, sweetheart, this boat has withstood a whole lot of things in its time, and not once has it capsized. I'm pretty sure we could try just about anything we wanted in here. What's that supposed to mean? She asked suspiciously. I think it might be more fun to let you figure that out for yourself eventually, he replied, making Amelia blush more than ever. Why do I suspect that you've got a bit of a one-track mind? She wanted to know. I like more than just fishing, he said, deliberately misunderstanding her. I also like hunting. Amelia giggled. Either way you go, that makes me the prey, right? I'd much rather trap, he told her, catching both her hands in one of his and holding them over her head as he leaned in to give her a kiss. Oh, I see, she chuckled, smiling as she gazed into his eye. Well, I'm beat, how about you? He said abruptly. We should go get a few hours of sleep in before we meet for the party. What do you say? All right, she agreed, irritated that he'd stopped once again. When Skylar dropped her off at her cabin, he got out of the truck and walked her over to the door. Amelia blushed as he drew her into his arms again and gave her a rather arousing kiss goodbye. Sleep well, sweetheart, he told her as he backed away. But sleep wouldn't come. Not when all of a sudden Amelia had gained the attention of 2 guys instead of just one. She had come out here looking for a change, but she wondered if she'd gotten more of one than she had bargained for. The trouble was, she was very attracted to each of these 2 men for very different reasons. Joe was cute and funny, with a ready wit and a gentle manner that made her feel safe and warm. By contrast, Skylar was intense and sensual, and being around him was so exciting she could barely contain her libido. And both men were too damned hot by far. Both rugged and muscular, lean in all the right places, with sensual lips and alluring eyes. Joe's golden brown hair fell to his shoulders, while Skylar's was a bit darker and longer, and he had it pulled back into a ponytail. Amelia couldn't help but want to pull it out and let it run through her fingers, pretty much the same thing he'd admitted he wanted to do to her. Joe's words concerning sharing came back to her, making her blush again. Damn, that sounded so hot, being with both men. Maybe even at the same time. Could she really break free from what she had been taught was right all her life to that extent? Out here away from the eyes of propriety, maybe she could. She had no idea what she should do. A few hours later, Amelia woke up when she heard Judy's voice calling to her from the kitchen. She padded out into the other room and saw that Seth was with her. What is he doing here? She asked sleepily. Sorry, I wanted to spend some more time with him, but my mother and sisters don't really want him around. They're afraid he'll do something stupid like his brothers. You have no idea how tired I am of following their lead, said Seth with a disgusted sigh. But family, at least out here, anyway, is very important. If I don't go along with whatever crap they want to do, I'm afraid they'd hurt me even worse than they'd hurt whoever they were picking on. You know? Actually, no, I don't particularly care about the nonsense bullies get up to or why, Amelia snapped. If you are decent to me, I'll be decent to you. Now, how about some breakfast? You're out of eggs, Judy told her. Amelia nodded. Toast it is. I know I have bread in any case. Joe took me to the store on the way home. So what happened last night with you and Joe? Asked Judy with a smirk. He seemed like he was really into you. Yeah, I guess you could say that. Amelia nodded as she stepped over to the refrigerator to get some orange juice. But nothing happened to speak of. Well, unless you count a kiss. Depends on the kiss. Seth smirked as he caught the first pieces of bread when they sprang free of the toaster and swiftly buttered them. He held the plate out to Amelia, but she pointed to Judy, so he placed the saucer in front of her. I think it was more of a silly kiss than anything else, she answered with a shrug. He told me I should taste Skylar too, and see if I prefer salty or sweet. Seriously, Judy gaped. Yeah, she laughed. But I'm still trying to figure out which one is supposed to be which. That's so. I don't know what that is, Judy replied. So, did you then? Did I what? Amelia asked as she received the second plate of toast and started to spread butter onto it while Seth went ahead and started a third batch for himself. Did you taste Skylar, of course? Judy chuckled. I might have done, she replied innocently. Oh my God, Amelia, you kissed both of them? She laughed. So then which one of them tasted better? Hey now, you don't need to know that, Seth said, sounding slightly jealous. I'm not asking for myself, silly, she protested. Just trying to be supportive here. I know that, he frowned slightly. Still, my father and brothers won't like having those two bears up in this neck of the woods. Amelia, you should probably visit them down by their place instead of bringing them here if you don't want any trouble. Bears, Amelia repeated, casting him a funny look. Seth's mouth set in a hard line. It's a nickname, he hedged. The name of a clan they belong to. I wonder if he was talking about them when he said bears have been causing trouble, Judy said speculatively. Of course not, Amelia scoffed. He had to be talking about real bears. Well, sorry to eat and run, ladies, but I have to work the day shift at the store. Wait, Seth, are you going to be at the beach party later? Asked Judy hopefully. I don't think I'd be welcome, he commented. You know how folks around here feel. If your sister can serve drinks there, I see no reason you can't help consume them, Judy scoffed. And if you're not doing anything stupid, why do you guys keep saying that? Amelia asked. What sort of things do they do that would be stupid? Tipping over the beer keg, lighting up the trash bin, being a nuisance in general, maybe threatening to beat up on a couple of the customers, Seth said, ticking each thing off on one of his fingers. Believe me, they'll think of something. They always do. Why would they want to do that? Amelia asked. To keep the townsfolk afraid of them, of course, he shrugged. And why do you do it? Because I'm afraid of them too, he admitted. And your father just lets this go on? She asked. My father is the worst one of the bunch, Seth scoffed. But like I said, family is everything out here and I am who I am. I'm just glad Judy decided to talk to me at all. I've been wanting to for a very long time, she replied. Well, I really need to go, he said then, and he leaned down to give Judy a kiss before he headed for the door. I'll make up my mind about that party later and let you know. Sure. Okay. She agreed, and Seth stepped out the front door. Good afternoon, Mr. Harper, said Amelia tiredly as she stepped inside his store to buy some eggs. I thought Seth was working today? Miss Fryer, he frowned. I heard you've been fraternizing with some of the locals recently. I've just met two of them, yes, she said with a nod. You must be careful who you step out with around here, Miss Fryer, he sneered. Not everybody is as friendly as they might seem. However, since you seem so interested in going into town to buy your groceries, perhaps you should do so from now on. But I just needed some eggs. I'm sure the store in town will have everything you need, Miss Fryer, he insisted. Please don't come into my store or onto my property again. Good day. Okay. If you say so, she shrugged, and walked straight back out the door without a backward glance. She didn't like that creepy place anyway. She had more than one friend who would willingly take her to town. When she got back home, she took a bath and changed into her swimsuit, ready to go down to the beach. Joe had texted to tell her that he'd be in the area around 3 with a final delivery for the day, and then he could give her a ride to the party. It was almost time for him to arrive now. Wow, you look good enough to eat, he said as he stepped up behind her where she sat on the couch. He pretended to bite her neck, making her giggle. Hi, Joe, she said with a smile. Accepting the kiss he planted on her lips with a smile. Did you taste Skylar yet? He teased as he drew her into his arms. I might have, she answered playfully, earning a grin from him. That sounds promising, he teased, kissing her again. This time, he bit her bottom lip before he let her go. Let's get going, shall we? Sure, she agreed. I'm more than ready to go anyway. The weirdest thing happened a little bit ago. I went to Harper's to try to buy eggs, and he threw me out of the store. Told me if I want to hang around with you and Skylar that I don't need help from him, and to get my groceries from town from now on. Damn, Joe sighed. I was afraid that would be his attitude once he found out. But why? Amelia wanted to know. Because we're enemies, rivals of a sort as well, he sighed. It's nothing that I want to involve you in at this point. Okay? Will you trust me? Trust us. I do trust both of you, Amelia said with a decisive nod. But you'd better be planning to bring me to the store from now on. No problem there, he said with a smile. You've got the car? She asked, surprised when she saw it there instead of his van. I thought you just made a delivery. Only a small package, he shrugged. I knew I was coming to get you, so I thought the car was a better choice. Thanks for that, she grinned. He opened her door for her, and Amelia slid into the seat. It was a nice ride, and the seat was very comfortable. What kind of car is this? Anyway, it looks like some sort of luxury sedan. It's a Caddy, he replied as he started the engine. Skylar got it when he graduated from college a few years ago. College? She asked curiously. Why'd Skylar go to college? He studied ecology and a few other things, he explained. He's an active member of the Environmental Protection Agency in these parts. He wants to preserve Moosehead Lake and keep the place safe for humans and animals alike. You know, there's been developers trying to sink their teeth into the area, since the lake's so huge and all, but most of us folks around here have been actively trying to keep them out. Well, all of us except Harper, of course. Harper? She asked curiously. Why would Harper want this place to get developed? Because he owns a big parcel of land that's being considered for a project, Joe explained. If it gets approved, he'll become a very wealthy man, but at the expense of a lot of good, hard-working folks who just want to keep their way of life like it is. They reached the beach around 4 and found Skylar waiting for them there. He stepped right over and drew Amelia into his arms, kissing the top of her head. Hi, Skylar, she said, wrapping her arms around his waist. Did you give those fish to Dale? Yeah, he's got them cooking as we speak, he said. Harper banned Amelia from his store. Joe informed Skylar as he pulled a cooler full of beers and sodas out of the car and set them onto the picnic table with some of the things Skylar had brought with him. He did, Skylar asked, looking annoyed as he let Amelia go and grabbed one of the beers. What reason did he give for it? I guess he didn't like her hanging around with us, said Joe with a frown of his own. We may need to keep an eye on Amelia's place. Make sure he doesn't decide to use her to get to us somehow. She'd be safer at our place, Skylar observed, winking at Amelia. No way is that guy making me lose 2 months of rent, Amelia protested. I've still got a book to write, and he's not going to stop me. It's something to keep in mind then, Skylar said. Well, we're here to have fun right now, Joe pointed out. We can figure all of this out later, okay? Amelia and Skylar agreed. For the rest of that afternoon and evening, Amelia divided her attentions between the two men, flirting and laughing and generally having fun. She even drank a couple of beers while she was at it, becoming decidedly tipsy. Eventually, Joe brought her home and tucked her into her bed, kissing her on the forehead before he tiptoed out the door and locked it behind him. Over the next few days, things went the same way, with Skylar tending to spend time with Amelia during the day and Joe taking her places in the afternoon or evening. She also saw a lot of Judy and Seth, who seemed to have decided to use her place as their little getaway, sharing breakfast and banter someplace where his brothers and her family wouldn't be around to complain.
Chapter 5. I can't believe I've known you for 2 whole weeks, Amelia said to Skylar as they put the groceries he'd just taken her to buy away. She was particularly glad they bought more bacon and eggs. While he put away the refrigerator food, Amelia put cereal and pasta into the cupboards. Does that call for a celebration? He smirked as he stepped up behind her. Damn it, don't tease me again. You're driving me crazy, Skylar. Sweetheart, I want to make sure the timing is right, that's all, he insisted. I'm trying to be a good boy. A little bad is definitely in order, she grumbled, biting his chin. Skylar lifted her into his arms and carried her to the couch, kissing her soundly along the way. He joined her there, drawing her into his arms for a while. Their kisses were just getting to the point of breathlessness when he let her go. She gave an exasperated little groan as he stood up. Skylar, why did you stop? She wanted to know. I think I should leave, sweetheart, he said reluctantly. I don't want to move too fast, and if I stay here, that's exactly what I'm likely to do. But what if that's exactly what I want you to do? She asked, running her fingers down his arm, then over his toned belly and heading lower until he caught her hand and cast her his most smoldering glance yet. There's nothing I'd like better than to make love to you, Amelia, he told her in a husky whisper. I just can't yet. I want to take my time with you, and you know that I have to be to work in an hour. You're just going to have to wait until I get back. You could always have a little fun with Joe. What is it with you two? She laughed. You really do want to share me, don't you? Yeah, we really do, he agreed. And then, after a very sweet but very brief kiss, he was gone. However, her rampant sexual needs still remained. She was forced to take a long, hot bath, but it did little to curb her appetite. She sighed as she brushed out her hair and tried out different styles until she found the one she wanted. Joe was due to arrive in less than an hour to take her out for dinner. Skylar wouldn't be able to join them this time since he had to work out at the lodge overnight. She didn't know all the particulars, but a large group of guys had come out there for some special event, and the entire staff was expected to take part in it as well. While she was in the bath, she decided she wanted to take Skylar's advice concerning Joe. She was hot and bothered, and the man would be more than willing to stay if she asked him to. After 2 weeks of kissing both of them, it was about time she got something for all her efforts as far as she was concerned. Having made that decision, Amelia felt a bit nervous because she hadn't been with a man in a very long time, and she wasn't very experienced either. She hoped she wouldn't do anything to make a fool out of herself or put Joe off, since she really liked him. And she really liked Skylar, too. She never would have believed it if somebody had told her she'd be developing feelings for 2 different guys at the same time, but there it was. She had just donned the pretty dress she'd bought the day she'd met Joe and Skylar when she heard the bedroom door open. She turned around, expecting to see Joe standing there, but instead she saw one of the Harper boys. What the hell? She gasped angrily as she glared at him. What do you think you're doing in here? Deke Harper, get out of my house. Why should I do that? He scoffed as he shuffled further into the room. You've been letting Seth come in here almost every single day. I saw him leaving here again just this morning. And around these parts, if you let one brother in, you let in all of them. Why shouldn't I be just as welcome as Seth? You don't know what you're talking about, she snapped, backing away until she ran into the wall, glaring up at him as he advanced in her direction. Seth has nothing to do with me. He's Judy Bench's friend. Judy Bench? He said speculatively. Well, if he's been seeing Judy, why does he keep coming over here? He had her against the wall, one arm to either side of her head, but he didn't move forward beyond that. He seemed to be waiting for her reply. I don't know, I guess her family doesn't want him in their house or something, she shrugged nervously. I really don't care what the reason is, personally. All I know is, I did not invite you into my bedroom, and that's all there is to that. You need to leave. You think you can just breeze into town and do whatever you like, don't you? He growled menacingly, leaning forward until their noses were touching. Somebody around here needs to teach you a lesson in manners. And is that somebody going to be you, Deke? Asked Joe from somewhere behind them, his usually teasing voice now low and threatening. Joe West, what a surprise, Deke smirked as he turned to look at him over his shoulder before backing away. I guess I should have known one of you boys would be here to save your little damsel in distress. I had hoped to defile the flower first, but maybe some other time. I'm only going to say this once, Harper, Joe said as he stepped between Amelia and her unwelcome guest. Stay away from Amelia. She's nothing to do with you. Got that? Understood, he replied with a lazy smirk as he backed towards the door. Looking over at her he added, see you soon, darlin'. Not if I see you first, she told him, and then he was gone. Didn't I tell you this place wouldn't be safe anymore? Said Joe with a frown. I wish you would let us bring you to our house, at least for the rest of your visit if nothing else. It would be so much easier to protect you if you were there. I don't know, she replied softly, biting at her lower lip in indecision. Skylar and I both would love to have you, he whispered into her ear, making the double meaning clear. I noticed, she said huskily. But I can't get a refund on all that cash. I'd hate to think I squandered away my parents' money like that. Amelia, is it worth risking your life over? He wanted to know. Surely they wouldn't do that, she began, though the look in his eyes afterwards made her wholly uncertain. Would they? People have gone missing around here before, he stressed, grasping her shoulder. Come on, I'm famished. We can talk about this over dinner, okay? Yeah, okay, she agreed with a nod. Joe wrapped an arm around Amelia's waist as he led her out to the car. He opened her door for her, and she got inside. She couldn't help wondering if Deke might be watching them leave from somewhere in the woods, but she refrained from looking around. If he was there, she'd rather not know about it. Tonight, Joe took Amelia to a fancy restaurant. They ordered a good meal and a bottle of wine, and they sat enjoying each other's company for a time. As they finished the meal, Joe's hand shot across the table to capture Amelia's as he said, "That was a good appetizer, but what I'd really like to do is feed the other hunger you've been stirring so much. Do you think maybe I could come in for a while this time?" Amelia woke the next morning and found herself all alone in her bed. Sighing deeply, she patted around the house in search of Joe, only to find that he was gone. However, sitting on the end table by the sofa, she found a note. The only thing written on it was jetty launch, noon. Obviously, he was hoping to go out on jet skis later, and it sounded like fun to her. It was already 10 now, and she wasn't wearing anything anyway, so it was the perfect time for a bubble bath. With a heady smile, she realized she was feeling a bit sore from last night's activities. She really could use the soak. Clean and dressed, she picked up her cell phone and texted, "Where is the jetty launch?" "Take the path down to the beach," Joe replied. "It's near the boat docks by the road." With a nod, Amelia stepped outside and walked along the path as usual, feeling uneasy when she came across the Keep Out sign, quickening her pace to hurry past. Judy had told her the land belonged to the Harpers, and since Nathan Harper and his sons had become her own personal stalkers since he'd thrown her out of his store, she didn't like to be so close to it. However, she forgot her discomfort as she came down to the water's edge. As usual, groups of people lined the water, and the lake had a few sailboats and other types of water activities going on. She wandered over toward the docks. She spotted Skylar's truck with 2 jet skis poking out of the back. Only 2? She wondered curiously as she made her way up to it. Before she arrived, a smirking Skylar got out and came to meet her. "Hi, Skylar," said Amelia with her customary inflection. "Hi, Amelia," he said back, and took her into his arms, giving her a rather thorough kiss. She felt more than a little aroused before he stopped, but she told herself that was probably because she'd recently been having sex with Joe. A twinge of guilt tried to creep its way into her system when she remembered that she had sex with Joe, really good sex. Didn't that mean she had made a choice? But if that was the case, why was her heart beating so wildly in her chest for the taller, slightly darker man in her arms? Now, she was feeling more confused than ever. "Let's go play," said Skylar, and by his tone she could tell he wasn't talking about just on the skis. A little thrill passed through her system as she realized she was going to have him soon. There was no mistaking the invitation in his tone. They were going somewhere to make love. Just like Joe wanted. Just like she wanted, too. They walked back to the truck, and Skylar opened the tailgate. Amelia could see that the 2 jet skis were on a sort of platform which could be brought out on a ramp that he pulled out. He carefully brought the platform and its cargo down while she stood off to the side, and wheeled it over to the docks. One at a time, he strong-armed them into the water. He was wearing a sleeveless t-shirt, white, and some jean cut-offs, along with some water socks. His muscles rippled in a most enticing way, making Amelia think of Judy in her constant talk about muscle-bound mountain men. She could really see the appeal as she watched Skylar work. Of course, she was wondering why Joe wasn't there at the moment, but she didn't take a whole lot of time to think about it. She'd gotten used to the way the 2 of them did things interchangeably. So much so, she hadn't even been surprised by it. "Ready, babe?" asked Skylar with a smirk, his eyes tracing down her body, making her squirm with her desire to get to the destination as opposed to the ride. She wondered if he could tell when she saw that amusement in his eyes. "Let's go," she said with a nod. "I know of a private island where we can go for lunch," he told her, his voice caressing over her skin like warm velvet. Husky and seductive. He must be well aware what she and Joe had done last night, and was eagerly anticipating a coupling of their own. His whole body was exuding that excitement, and Amelia was more than ready to fulfill the fantasy. "How far away is it?" she asked huskily, making him chuckle. "Don't worry, you'll be good and wet by the time we arrive," he said, putting a hand under her chin and tilting her face up for another kiss. Was it possible it was even hotter than the first? He backed off and they headed toward the skis. Amelia looked at hers dubiously as she figured out how to get on. "Have you ever done this before?" he asked. "Was it that obvious?" she chuckled. "Totally obvious," he smirked. He was leaning slightly forward on his own ski, and Amelia mirrored his stance. He said, "Why don't I show you how to turn it on?" "I'm a pretty fast learner," she smirked back. "Watch me, baby," he told her, and that voice of his sent a shiver right down into her groin. He was infinitely good at turning things on. She saw what he did, and then she copied him, the jet ski purring to life between her thighs, heightening her awareness of that part of her body even more. Skylar explained how to work the thing, and soon the 2 of them were out on the water. Amelia decided she liked this mode of travel much better than some boat, and when she smiled appreciatively at him, Skylar gunned his engine, spraying her with water as he surged forward. "No fair," she called after him. The two of them were laughing like a couple of idiots, chasing each other along the huge lake. A few times, Amelia managed to spray him back, but mostly it was Skylar spraying her. It was so much fun Amelia almost forgot their main objective completely. But then, Skylar slowed as they neared the docks on a small island, and let her in. She was feeling breathless and deliciously wet. Skylar helped her ashore and they fell together on a patch of grass. Their idiotic grins were replaced with something much more carnal as they looked into each other's eyes.
Hey there. Did you know that we've other hot romances like this that we want to release? But we need your help. Subscribing shows us that you're part of our journey and allows us to make more of these stories at a higher quality. So please, my queen, subscribe to the Romancely YouTube channel now. Thanks. Now back to your story. Chapter 6. Well, that was certainly fun, said Amelia breathlessly. I don't think I've ever had so much fun playing in the water before. Jet skis are definitely something I could get into. Glad you liked it, Skylar said, running his fingers over her face. Very much, she said with a nod. Her heart fluttered madly in her chest as she stared at him, and he stared right back, his brown eyes darkening with desire. I want to touch you, Amelia, Skylar told her as his eyes flicked over her face where his fingers had been. His light touch had drifted lower, nearing her collarbone as he said this. Her voice shook slightly as she said, Please, you don't want to eat lunch first? He asked wickedly, sitting up and pointing to a table set up a bit further into the woods. It was covered with a white linen tablecloth, and a huge picnic basket was set on top, keeping the cloth from blowing off if any wind happened to kick up during his absence. Beside it was a small cooler and a couple of champagne flutes. Briefly, Amelia wondered what time it was when he'd put the things there, and how he knew they would remain undisturbed. Brow furrowed for a moment, she asked, No, I'm not hungry just yet. Who owns this island, anyway? It's owned by the Bear Clan, he explained. They're affiliated with the lodge I work for, but there's not a whole lot going on with this place until late summer, when the hunting season begins. Right now, only members of the clan are in residence, so it's pretty safe to leave things wherever you want. And you're allowed to come here whenever you want because you work with the Forest Service? She clarified, remembering him telling her something like that before. Or because you're a member of the clan. Both, I suppose, he said with a little shrug. Oh, she nodded. Baby, did we come over here to discuss the island or enjoy it? He teased her. The next thing Amelia knew, he pinned her to the grass and leaned down to kiss the tip of her nose. Yeah, she agreed. They gathered up their clothes, put them on, and went over to the little table to invade the food. Wow, you really outdid yourself with this basket. Amelia chuckled when she saw what was inside. Roasted chicken, potato salad, corn on the cob, apple pie, and of course a bottle of white wine. Well, I figured you might need the energy by the time I was through with you, Skylar teased her. Really? She chuckled. You're dreaming if you think I'm through with you, Miss Fryer, he said with a wicked grin. As soon as we're finished here, I'll be up for round 2. It took them a while to finish eating, and then they packed everything back to a little cabin just up the hill. Skylar set down the table and Amelia set down the basket, and then she found herself in his arms again. I don't have to be to work for another 3 hours, you know, he said with a grin. Yeah, Amelia smirked. It doesn't even take an hour to get back to your place. That's true too, she agreed. What do you say we try out this cabin first, and then we can try out your bed as well, he teased. I say, what are we waiting for? She replied with a smile. Skylar ended up being late for work. It was early evening, and Amelia was back home again, working on her book. Despite everything going on, she had still managed to crank out a good 30,000 words, and she felt really good about it. However, the story had gone from the sweet romance she had intended to a much spicier one. She wore a satisfied smirk as she finished up one hell of a hot love scene. I can certainly tell what you've been up to over the last 24 hours, said an unwelcome voice from behind her. You smell like those bears from a mile away. Amelia turned her head to glare at him. Deke Harper wore a disgusted frown as he stepped up behind her, his hot breath streaming down her neck. I read that rubbish you've been churning out while you were gone yesterday, too. You'll be lucky if you sell that book at all. It's trite, overworked, and the plot is so contrived even a lovesick cow wouldn't believe it. I locked my door, she said irritably. That should have been enough of a hint that I didn't want any company. Don't you think? What are you doing in here? Perhaps they are giving out teaching diplomas to idiots these days, Miss Fryer? Are you aware that it doesn't do much good to lock a door if you just leave the key underneath the flower pot next to it? He scoffed as he suddenly wrapped a hunk of her long, blonde hair around his wrist and yanked her head backwards. Why would you give yourself to both of them? One of them I might have guessed at, but never both. You look like such a good girl. It's none of your business what I do, Amelia hissed. Now let go of me and get out of my house before I call the cops. Oh, you want to call the cops? He sneered. Not thinking straight again, are you? I'm standing here, and the phone is way over there. How were you planning to reach it? I told you to let go, Amelia snapped, and panic began to work its way into her system. Didn't I tell you to stay away from my woman? Joe demanded hotly as he stepped into the cabin. His fist landed right on Deke's jaw, knocking him to the floor. He pulled hard on Amelia's hair as he went, and she shrieked with pain. The evil Harper boy yelped like a dog and ran out on all fours, but Amelia was too distracted by her pain to pay much attention to the strange action right that minute. What the heck is wrong with that guy anyway? She demanded indignantly. It's not you, sweetheart. They're just mad at Skylar, he explained. What for? He's been spearheading the campaign to keep Moosehead Lake from being incorporated and developed, among other things, Joe explained. He's part of a team that reports on the environmental impact if certain proposed building sites are approved, and one of those proposals involved the sale of Harper's land. He hoped for a big enough profit to buy a better place for himself and his clan. Clan? She repeated. There's that word again. Well, yeah, Joe said uncomfortably. You know, like how he calls me and Skylar bears. It's because we're part of the Bear Clan. Theirs is called the Coyote Clan. It's kind of complicated. Suffice it to say, bears and coyotes don't particularly get along. So, Skylar prevented Harper from selling out, and that's why Harper is mad? Pretty much, Joe shrugged as he moved to embrace her from behind. In any case, I've been telling you this place isn't safe. I wonder if you're beginning to believe me now. I believed you before, she told him irritably. But still, my book isn't quite finished, and I wanted to write it here. Get your laptop, he said decisively. I'm taking you to my house. Don't worry, though, I'll put you in the spare bedroom. You can work in there. Don't I have a say in it? Amelia complained as she crossed her arms over her chest. I'm not letting them harm you, Joe insisted. Do you really believe you can continue as you have been here? Look at me, Amelia. They have hurt other people and they will hurt you too. Maybe even make you disappear just to get to Skylar. It isn't safe to leave you here. I could always return to the city, she said, though the very idea cut deeply into her gut. The last thing she wanted now that she felt so alive thanks to Joe and Skylar was to return to a place that had never really felt like home. She didn't know yet if this place did feel like it, but so far she liked it a whole lot better. If it wasn't for the Harpers, could she stay in Greenville indefinitely? Not in this cabin, that was certain. But what if these two asked her to stay with them? Joe hadn't asked her in so many words, but he'd certainly hinted at it with a hopeful grin in the midst of his teasing more than once. Her heart pounded harder at the thought of it, her living in the mountains with two hot men. Think what her mother would say about that. Sighing as she went to grab her laptop, she tried to hide the confusion she knew must be evident on her face. This whole situation was just so alien to her. She had no idea just how far she should take things, and she sure as hell didn't think she'd be able to find a job as a private school teacher out here. It'd be one hell of a commute if she continued to teach in Portland. Besides, why was she even thinking about it when she hadn't been specifically invited to stay? Maybe this whole situation would be temporary, and then she would be forced to return to her meaningless life again. Are you mad at me, Amelia? Joe wanted to know. He cupped her chin and tilted up her face so she had to look into his eyes. No, I'm not mad, she said. Not at you, anyway. I know you're right and you just want what is best for me. I'm just trying to figure out what's really best for me in general. Because you hate your job, the city, and the uncertainty of how much longer you can exist all alone? He asked, drawing her into his arms so that her computer was pressed intimately between them. How do you know me so well, Joe? She wanted to know. You know more about me than I know about myself. I'm the delivery guy, he smirked. I meet people all day, every day. Learn to read them well in a job like that, you know? There's a melancholy in your eyes that I'd love to erase forever. She nodded. I'd like that. Come on, let's go, he said, keeping one arm around her as he used the other to guide her towards the door. Skylar and I can come back later to get the rest of your things. They drove back to Joe and Skylar's cabin in silence. At some point Amelia had placed her hand on his thigh, and a sort of longing sparked between them. They fell together completely spent.
Chapter 7. It was early morning when Amelia opened her eyes again. She found Skylar sitting beside her on the bed, gently shaking her awake. She groaned and muttered, I knew it. I didn't get any work done at all. Hey, he said with a grin. Have you been charging that laptop all night? Yeah, I plugged it in when I got here, she answered. Why? Joe doesn't want to leave you alone all day, but he's got deliveries to do, and I need to work a few more hours, he explained. I want to bring you with me on a little excursion. I've decided to drive so you can type a bit along the way. You've only just come back from the lodge, she said sleepily. Are you going back out there again? No, I'm not going to the lodge. This trip is for my other job, he said. I help the EPA out by gathering samples every couple of weeks to ensure the lake and lands around here haven't become toxic. Toxic? Amelia gasped. Why would they become toxic? Because we are sitting in the midst of acres and acres of undeveloped land, on the biggest lake for many miles, he explained. There's some people who would pay a pretty penny to dump their hazardous wastes out here. That's terrible! Amelia gasped. Some dumpers fly it in during the night and drop the stuff straight into the water, Skylar said. Then there's the sort who like to bury it someplace where they hope it won't be found. It's the diggers that are the hardest to stop. And it does no good to say anything unless you have proof, even if you know exactly who they are. I had no idea, Amelia said. Get dressed, sweetheart, he said. I don't have time to be distracted by your delectable body at the moment. Dress warm, we'll be a bit higher up the mountain and it can get a bit cold even in August. And I'm glad you're here, by the way. She smirked as she scrambled out of the bed and recovered the clothes she'd shed the night before. When she caught Skylar glancing appreciatively at her naked ass, she giggled, quickly pulling on her pants and shirt so he wouldn't be tempted. Better? She asked sweetly. Absolutely not, he replied. Let's go. They walked hand in hand out to the truck, and Amelia noticed a bigger boat hitched on its own trailer in the back. She raised an inquisitive brow as she asked, Just how many boats do you own, Skylar? 4, he replied with a shrug. Then he opened her door for her and she moved to get inside. He swept her on her backside as she went, making her gasp. He closed the door, laughing as he walked around the front and got in on the driver's side. It took them about 20 minutes to drive up to the boat launch at the top of the road. Skylar put a hand on Amelia's thigh along the way, effectively distracting her from her attempts at typing as it sent heat coursing through her body. She wished they were headed somewhere else. Somewhere they could assuage their growing needs. Amelia believed she was becoming more jaded than she ever thought possible since meeting these two, but a secret, rebellious part of her really liked it. She would like it even better if she got to be a bit jaded right now. "We're here," said Skylar as he turned off the ignition. She reached for the handle to open her door, and she couldn't seem to wipe the sudden grin off of her face. The hand he'd had on her thigh suddenly crept higher as he leaned over to speak softly in her ear. "What are you smirking for, Amelia?" "Am I?" she asked innocently. "You are," he said. He kissed her ear, then nipped it suggestively before he let her go. "But we don't have time to wipe that grin off your face right now. Come on, baby. Into the boat. Leave the laptop in the truck, we'll lock the door." Skylar got out, stepped to the back, and used the lift to launch the boat into the lake. Then he took Amelia's hand and led her to the dock, helping her aboard. He stepped in after her and started the engine, and the two of them were on their way. They headed north, jockeying past the early rising tourists who hoped to find good spots before the crowds started to form. Skylar started to point out different plots of land to either side of the boat as they went. Then, his face fell slightly as they rounded a bend. "And this land right here belongs to the Harpers," he said with a sneer. "We'll definitely want to stop for some samples here." "Do you believe that Harper is involved somehow with the dumping, then?" Amelia wanted to know. "Why would you think so?" "Harper has been trying desperately to get money, for whatever reason," Skylar explained. "He first tried to obtain it through the sale of this land for the purposes of development, but I prevented his attempt by taking it to the committee. Knowing that, and being suspicious of the rising toxicity levels, which seem to be concentrated in this area, I've been trying to pinpoint a location here. But legally, I can only collect samples at the edge of the water. Anything obtained on the land itself without permission would be inadmissible as evidence against him." "So what, you skirt around his place taking samples instead?" Amelia clarified. "Yeah, that's all I can do," he shrugged. "We'll be mooring just north of his land so I can get soil samples as well. But we have to be careful. I've had more than one run-in with Harper and his boys out here. They'd like nothing more than to make me disappear just like the girl we've been searching for since last year." "You think he might have her somewhere, don't you?" Amelia asked. "I'm almost certain of it," he said. He dipped a long-handled scoop into the water and poured the resulting contents into a little vial, which he capped and stowed away in his pack. "Maybe it's a bad idea to come out here alone, then," she pointed out. "There's at least 3 of them and only one of you." "No, Amelia, it's much easier to remain unseen when I'm alone," he said, shaking his head. "I'm taking a big risk, bringing you along for the ride. But with Harper and his boys gunning for you, there's no way I could leave you home alone. When we go quickly, we go quietly, we get what we need and we get out." "Understood?" "Yes," Amelia said with a nod. Skylar angled the boat to the dock and killed the engine. He hauled himself up, then reached out to bring her with him. He drew her against his side and set a fast pace as he brought her towards the shore. "We need to hike in a bit," he said. "We'll be taking several samples along the way. I want you to hold these sample bags for me. That should make things go faster. Now, we should keep our talking to a minimum after this." "All right," she agreed, taking the bags in her hands. They trekked into the forest at a fast clip, making sure not to stumble over the uneven ground as they went. Skylar had one arm draped around Amelia's waist, guiding her steps and occasionally pausing to kiss her temple or her ear. He took one of the bags and bent to scoop some dirt, pouring it in, sealing it, and checking his watch, which also contained a GPS which told him their exact coordinates. He marked them onto the bag, put it into his pack, then wrapped an arm around her again as they continued on. They did this about 5 times before his kisses became noticeably more frequent. Then, one of them landed on the side of her lips, making Amelia gasp. The unmistakable call of a coyote made both of them freeze. In another part of the forest, another coyote gave an answering call. "It looks like we're going to have to finish this discussion later," said Skylar as he let her go. "Stay here, sweetheart. I'll go see if I can scare them off. And Amelia, don't hesitate to get back to the boat if you see any coyotes here. Do you understand?" "Why, yeah," she said, quaking with her fear. "Shouldn't I head back there now?" "There may be no need for you to go alone," he replied. "Give me 5 minutes, and no more. Understand?" She nodded. Skylar disappeared into the woods, and Amelia zipped up her clothes, then continued to lean on the tree as she waited. Suddenly, she was no longer alone. Mr. Harper was standing in front of her. She had no idea how he'd gotten there. "Miss Fryer," he smirked. "What a most unexpected pleasure to find you here on my land." "Your land?" she scoffed. "I was told this parcel belongs to someone else." "Not anymore," he said, and he reached out to grasp her around the throat, but not enough to hurt her. "I've recently come into a large enough sum of money to claim it for my own. Which means, of course, that you are trespassing." Unexpectedly, the man let out a coyote howl, and Amelia flinched. "You're not going to like what we do with trespassers, Miss Fryer," he added. Behind him, 2 coyotes came into the copse of trees where they were standing. Their teeth were bared as they advanced. Then, suddenly, Deke and Zach were standing where the coyotes had been. Amelia blinked, sure that she must be seeing things, and this made the 3 men laugh. "You seem surprised, Miss Fryer," Harper laughed. "Could it be that our 2 favorite bears have not yet shown their true colors? I find that hard to believe, since you're clearly covered in their stench. What a steal it will be, if I make you a part of my clan instead of theirs." "What are you talking about, you creepy old man?" Amelia spat. "What true colors?" "Deke, Zach, take her to the lodge," he said. "Leave her untouched until my return. I'll go and deal with Skylar myself. He and I have a score to settle." "Yes, father," said the 2 boys in unison. Harper shoved Amelia in their direction, and each man caught an arm, dragging her with them into the forest. "Skylar," she shouted, struggling to get free. "Skylar!" Deke's fist connected with her jaw, and Amelia knew no more. Her eyes opened, and she found herself lying on a hard mattress with no pillows or blankets to add any sort of comfort. Judy Bench was also there, staring up at the ceiling until she noticed that Amelia had opened her eyes. "Thanks a lot, Amelia," she complained. "Why'd you go and tell Deke about me and Seth? Now I'm probably going to have to do all 3 brothers, and I can't stand the other 2. "What the heck are you talking about?" Amelia asked tiredly. "Why do I feel like I've been drugged?" "Probably because you were," she smirked. "You've been lying there almost 2 days now." "Oh no," she groaned. "What did these guys do to Skylar?" "I don't know, really, except I think he must have gotten away," she said. "I overheard Mr. Harper bragging about running that damned bear off. So he just went home and left me here?" Amelia sighed. "I find that difficult to believe. If you ask me, I would never have let my enemy leave so he could regroup with the other half of his team, but heck, whoever said coyotes were smart?" "Hold the phone, you knew about this?" Amelia asked. "You knew about the Harpers being able to shift into coyotes? And Skylar and Joe become bears?" "Yes," she said, assuming Amelia must know by now. "But there may be something you're unaware of, though. They can only transform us into shifters on a blue moon, and that is coming up tonight." So if you don't want to become something other than a bear, I suggest we find a way to get you out of here. What about you, though? Asked Amelia, still reeling from the information she had just learned but trying not to show it. This must have been the thing that Joe had wanted to tell her, but she had asked him not to. In hindsight, it might have been good to know. Me? She scoffed. I've already made my decision. You mean, you're a coyote already? Amelia asked, confused. No, not yet, but I intend to be, she explained. Seth and I are going to run away from here, start our own clan somewhere else. So, you can do that? Amelia asked absently. Go figure. So, this must all be a dream then? This whole thing, it's all too crazy to be real. Oh, no, Amelia, it's very real, she explained. But that's not all. I also heard Harper say that if you refuse to become his bride, he'll simply bury you with the next waste delivery. I'm not really sure what he's talking about, but... I think I have a pretty good idea, Amelia commented, her stomach churning at the very thought. Being buried alive wasn't particularly appealing to begin with, let alone with the additional threat of toxic sludge turning her into a mutated version of herself into the bargain. She definitely needed to get out of there, and fast. What time of day is it? She asked worriedly, wondering just how many hours were left before moonrise. Do I even have time to try? It's probably early afternoon, she said. But I wouldn't even try to escape until they bring you outside, if I were you. This whole place is one big booby trap. And even if you manage to get outside, they'll only capture you again. How am I supposed to avoid this ceremony thing then? Amelia asked with extreme frustration. Because I sure as hell don't want to become that guy's bride. I haven't quite worked out that part yet, Judy admitted. Great, Amelia scoffed. This day is getting worse and worse. Maybe your bears will come for you, Judy suggested, casting her a hopeful grin. Skylar told me they have never discovered where this place is, Amelia said dismally. How would they suddenly find it now? Don't be dumb, Amelia, Judy smirked. Bears have a very powerful sense of smell, especially when it comes to sniffing out the location of their mate. You've got their smell all over you. How would you know? Harper said he'd have to bathe you for an hour just to get it off of you before he'd touch you with a 10-foot pole, she said dryly. Wow, my fiancé sure thinks highly of me, doesn't he? She scoffed disdainfully. Maybe that's how you could get away? Judy said brightly. Don't be stupid, she snapped. If I wait that long, I'd already be a coyote. I don't really think my two guys would be very happy with a situation like that. Although since they didn't even warn me about any of this, in a way it would serve them right. You're not going to dump them, are you? Judy gasped. Those two are totally hot. Oh, are you even listening to me? Amelia complained. Did I not just say that if I became a coyote they'd be likely to dump me? Well, if it's any consolation, I'm sure Seth and I would let you join our clan, she said with a shrug. We're going to need other members. Amelia scowled. Think, Amelia. Think. There's got to be some way I could get free. Maybe you could distract them somehow. No way, I'm in enough hot water right now as it is, she said. Until you showed up, I was pretty sure Harper was intending to marry me. So what makes you think he isn't? Amelia wanted to know. I thought these people believed in multiple mates. No, I don't think the women would share their men with another female, Judy explained. Sorry, I don't know enough about it to tell you for sure, but Seth never said anything about doing it that way around. Who knows, maybe girls are too jealous to cooperate with each other. Anything is possible, Amelia conceded. Right now, it wouldn't surprise me very much if a ship from outer space flew down and aliens stepped out to do a samba. She stepped over and tugged on the window, but found that it was nailed shut. Sighing, she went over to try the other. She already knew it would be nailed too. Did you really think they'd make it as easy as that? Judy asked as she crossed her arms over her chest. Like I said, waiting is the only thing you really are able to do. There's not much time left, Skylar insisted as he and Joe walked through the trees that led onto Harper's land. If we don't locate Coyote Clan's lodge before moonrise, you know exactly what that fiend is going to do. There's no way I'm letting Harper have Amelia, Joe insisted hotly. We found her fair and square, and we've even claimed her physically as well. I'm not even sure that's what he has in mind for her, knowing that. I'm much more worried that he intends to kill her than take her for his own. Neither of which is acceptable to me, Skylar pointed out. Now would you please hurry up? I'm fairly sure we're going to find their cabins just over there. If we haven't found them before, why do you think we're going to find them this time? Joe scoffed. Because we have something now that we never had before, said Skylar as he touched finger to the side of his nose. And what, pray tell, is that? The smell of our mate, he said grimly. Are you going to tell me that you don't smell her as well? Joe sniffed the air. I do, but don't you think we'd smell it much better if we turned to bare form? Stop, Skylar said then. I hear something. Transform and wait for my signal. We need to know what we're up against before we just rush in. Wait here while I scout it out. Yes, Joe nodded. As one, the two of them shifted. Then one bear remained while the other stepped quietly into the forest. Soon, he returned and motioned for the other to follow. The two bears went on all four, hoping to stay out of sight. They crept up and looked out at a row of 4 cabins about 100 yards away from them. Then, they laid down side by side to wait.
Chapter 8. Amelia, Judy, and the 4 Harper men were all standing in a clearing in the forest with the moonlight streaming down onto a small pond beyond. Amelia was glaring recalcitrantly at Mr. Harper as Zack tugged on her rope, bringing her to the center. I have no doubt that your friend has filled you in on the particulars of this little outing, my dear, he said with a smirk. In fact, since I spoon-fed her every single word, I'm sure of it. No, don't look accusingly at her. She's too stupid to know she was being used. You, on the other hand, you're much too smart for your own good. You should have left well enough alone, Amelia scoffed. I would have just wrote my book and minded my own business. But now you've pissed me off. Incidentally, I wouldn't marry you if you were the last man or whatever you are on Earth. You are dreaming big time. I've already decided that I won't be giving you a choice in the matter, he informed her. You see, it's been a while since I've had the comfort of a woman in my bed, and I've decided that you're very pretty and spirited, and taking you would royally piss off your 2 boyfriends. In fact, I'm looking forward to this, even if you come along bound and gagged to accomplish my goal. You disgust me, Mr. Harper, she told him in a haughty tone. You will learn to appreciate me unless you'd prefer to be passed around by my sons. He smirked. Come, the moon is almost into position. What's it going to be, Miss Fryer? Amelia glanced over to see that all 3 of the younger Harpers had ganged up on Judy. Zack was giving her a brutally savage-looking kiss. Deke stood behind her, pressing his body to hers in a rather suggestive way. And Seth had fallen to his knees and buried his face between her now naked thighs. Your sons appear to be much too busy with their newest plaything to bother with me, she pointed out. But I'm not about to let you touch me in the same manner they are touching her. Oh, believe me, Miss Fryer, I'll be touching you a whole lot more than that, he replied. Suddenly, he shifted, but not into a full coyote. Instead, he had become some weird sort of combination of coyote and human, and his fangs hung menacingly out of his mouth, frightening her. "Stay away from me," she shouted, and turned to run. He let her run for about a minute before she heard the howl, and she knew that he was finally running after her. She headed for the trees, thinking that perhaps she would climb, but then realizing that would simply trap her. Heart thundering in her chest, she tried to think of how she might be able to get away. Again and again he howled, taking his time. It was obvious he was enjoying himself and allowing her to wear herself out, but Amelia was desperate enough to try anyway. But then, suddenly, the coyote was almost right on top of her. She screamed and cowered, and a huge black bear suddenly plowed right into Harper as he pounced, knocking him away from her. Amelia sucked the air back into her lungs, and somehow she knew this bear was Skylar. Then a slightly smaller, bulkier bear joined him, and together the two of them practically tore Harper apart, finally letting him limp away when he was barely able to walk. He didn't bother to transform back into the form of a man as he went, but both bears swiftly did so as they turned to take her into their arms. But she was having none of it as adrenaline pumped into her system. Anger spiked right along with it. "Don't touch me, you two," she told them hotly. "Why did I have to find out about this bear thing from somebody else instead of either one of you?" "What?" Joe grumbled, grasping at her wrist as she tried to move away. "I tried to tell you and you wouldn't let me. I'm sorry you found out like this, but it doesn't change how I feel. It doesn't change how Skylar feels either. We want you to stay. You want to turn me into a bear too, right?" "That only works if you want it to," Skylar informed her. "Harper never could have forced you to become a coyote without your consent. It sounded like he was trying to force you into giving it." "You mean you heard the whole thing?" Amelia gasped. "Why didn't you come rescue me then?" "If you hadn't run, we would have," Joe explained. "But once you did, we knew the safest way to free you was to wait until Harper made his move. We were far enough away from his sons that they would be unable to interfere." "Skylar, I have to tell you," Amelia began. Coyote howls pierced the night air, coming their way. "Tell me later, sweetheart," he suggested. "First, let's get back to the boat." She didn't bother to argue with them, of course, since they'd probably pissed the Harpers off royally. They moved swiftly and surely toward the water, with the coyotes in hot pursuit. They reached the boat and got in, then quickly made their way out into the deeper waters and away from danger. "Now, sweetheart, what did you want to tell me?" Skylar asked as he pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "Harper threatened to have me buried along with the next toxic waste shipment if I refused to become his wife," Amelia said. "Well, not directly, but Judy told me that he said it." Skylar's eyes darkened at this. "Oh, that bastard is going to pay, hearsay or not," he commented. "I wish I could turn this boat around right this minute." "And do what, Skylar?" Joe pointed out. "If we go back now, we'll only get ourselves killed. We need to tell the others. You know that." "But not yet," Skylar replied. "First, we need to make sure he can't try this again." Joe grasped one of Amelia's hands and looked her right in the eye. "There's only two ways we can do that, sweetheart," he said. "If you don't want to go back to Portland, we're going to need to know now. You won't be safe here if we don't change you. I think you already know that." A surge of adrenaline welled up inside Amelia as she realized they were nearing the island where she and Skylar had first made love. The tension throughout his body told her he was aware of it as well. Her eyes met Joe's, and he was smirking at her playfully. "Would you care for a moonlit stroll, Amelia?" he inquired. "Unless, of course, you would prefer to return to your boring, unfulfilling life in the city?" "I think I like option 2 much better," she replied in a husky whisper. Because she was sitting on his lap, she felt it when her words made Skylar's cock bloom. Now it was hard and insistent against her backside as Joe guided the boat to the dock and hopped out. He held out a hand and Amelia took it, allowing him to pull her up and into his arms. Skylar tied the boat while Joe gave Amelia a kiss. Then he was behind her again, pressing into her body as he kissed the side of her neck even as Joe's tongue teased its way past her eagerly parting lips. Then he let go and walked on ahead while Skylar wrapped an arm around her waist to guide her up the slope. She was feeling decidedly hot and just a little nervous because she'd never been faced with both men wanting her at the same time. She wasn't even quite sure how that was going to work, but she was quite certain she was about to find out. Joe stopped in a large patch of grass and turned to face Skylar and Amelia, his face all business now. "Well, first the formalities then," he said as he pulled a little flask from his shirt pocket. "What is that?" asked Amelia nervously when she saw it. "Blood from the elder, namely my father," he explained. "But before that, I need you to understand all of this. Okay?" "Sure," she agreed, letting Skylar sit and pull her into his lap again. "About 200 years ago, my forefathers came out into these woods and discovered a people living here who had the special power to shift into animals," he began. "Back then, they could change into anything they wished, as most of us still can, but they had begun to divide into specific clans. They possessed the ability to transform normal humans into shifters as well, and that's how my ancestor was incorporated. Both he and his wife became shifters, and if two shifters mate, their offspring is always able to shift as well. My grandfather was one such offspring, and so was his brother." "But your grandfather was older?" "By a few years, yes," he nodded. "Anyway, women out here were scarce, so it wasn't uncommon among the shifters to share them. My grandmother was wife to both of the brothers, and among them this was perfectly normal. Skylar and I are not brothers, but we live just as though we are. I made Skylar into a shifter when he was 12 and I was 14. We decided a couple years later to buy the cabin and make our home there. Before that, we lived on this island with the rest of our clan, but we had learned that Harper and his boys were terrorizing these people and we wanted to help. Our main job, other than the ones that pay our bills, is to help keep Moosehead Lake a safe place to live and prosper." "I see," she nodded. "And Harper seems to be breaking the rules." "Very much so," Skylar agreed. "And you want me to stay and be a wife to the two of you, is that it?" she clarified. "Legally, you can only be married to one of us," Joe explained. "Skylar and I agreed that because of the bloodlines and the fact that I am his maker, that the distinction should belong to me, but we want to leave it up to you. If you choose us, whose name would you like to have?" She began, and her voice was high and throaty. She cleared it. "I think that's very sound reasoning as well," she replied. "Your name, I mean." "Good," he smiled. "You may have noticed that Skylar took you only after I'd had you first. There was a reason for that, Amelia. It's part of the ceremony we'll be doing here tonight. I had to be the first to make the magic happen, but from now on, baby, anything goes. And on this night, once you've taken the blood, you'll mate us both." "Both?" she asked curiously. "As the two clan members to whom you have given yourself, it is expected for you to do so, yes," he nodded. "Once you've been with each of us, the bonding ceremony will be complete." Blushing, she asked, "Is it only through sex that you transform?" She was remembering him saying he'd changed Skylar as a 12-year-old boy, and the thought was embarrassing, but one she needed an answer to since she wanted to know just what sort of relationship to expect if she said yes. Smirking in understanding, he said, "No, sweetheart. Haven't you ever heard of making blood brothers? By cutting your hands and binding them together." Skylar smirked, showing her his scar. "Oh, yes," she said, her heart pounding at his husky tone. "I see." Joe smirked. "To make you a shifter only requires receiving the blood of a shifter. Nothing more," he explained. "The rest of the ceremony is all symbolic, but something which has become a very large part of our culture within the Bear Clan. We've brought you to this sacred place, here under the light of the blue moon, to pledge our devotion to each other. If you agree, then all three of us will add our blood here with that of the elder, and then you will drink. It doesn't take long for the effect to happen afterwards, and then we celebrate. Is that what they call it these days?" Amelia smirked, and Skylar hugged her appreciatively. "Do you need time to think about it?" Joe wanted to know. "No," Amelia answered softly. "I've had all the time I need." Joe's eyes glowed with happiness as he pulled a bear claw from his other pocket and smiled. He uncapped the bottle and used the claw to slit open his palm, letting his blood flow freely into the opening. "Come here," he said softly, holding the clean hand out to draw her gently from Skylar's arms and hand the claw to him. Skylar used it as well, repeating Joe's action with a rather jaded smile as he stared into Amelia's eyes. "Your turn, sweetheart," said Joe in her ear. "Do you want to do it yourself?" "I don't think I could," she admitted softly as she turned to hide her face against his chest. "Do you want Skylar to do it?" he asked softly, and she shyly nodded. She felt rather than saw him take her hand and cut it, swift and clean. Opening her eyes, she watched as he held her hand over the bottle. "So, is it just blood in there? Or is it some kind of a drink or something?" she wanted to know. "White wine," Skylar told her. "The same as I gave you before." "That's significant too, isn't it?" she asked. "Only as it pertains to us," he said. "Call it a sentimental addition. It was the first drink we shared." Amelia blushed as she remembered, then let Skylar bring the drink to her lips. A slight fear froze her for a moment before she tilted her head back and drank. "Drink all of it, babe," Joe told her, and she did as she was told. "Then we'll take you to lie down in the cabin for about an hour. You'll need that time to adjust." "Is it going to hurt?" she wanted to know, realizing belatedly that she probably should have asked him beforehand. "It can," Skylar told her. "Yes, Skylar is the one who would know," Joe said. "I was born as a shifter and never had to transform. Come on, let's get you into bed. Okay?" "Yes," she agreed. Her teeth clamped shut as a strange sensation stole its way through her body. A wave of nausea struck her afterwards, and she couldn't stop herself as she emptied her stomach's contents on the ground. Sucking in a breath, she asked worriedly, "That won't cause the process to stop, will it?" "No, sweetheart. The magic is already in your system now," Joe said softly, wrapping an arm around her waist and leading her toward the cabin door. "For all intents and purposes, you're already ours. Welcome to Bear Clan." "Thanks," she smirked, even though her body had started to tremble and was now shaking violently. Skylar grasped her other arm as Joe moved to make room for him, and together the two men brought her into the cabin and shut the door. "Get her into the bed, Skylar, while I make us some tea," said Joe as he moved into the kitchen. Skylar helped Amelia into the other room, lying her on the bed. "These tremors will get just a bit worse before they get better," he warned her. "But don't worry, sweetheart. I'll stay with you the whole time. I promise you, nothing bad will happen. Hold me," she managed to plead, smiling softly, which was unusual for him. Skylar stretched out behind Amelia on the bed and spooned against her, wrapping her into his arms. Amelia smiled, blown away by the ironic fact that she wasn't afraid. Here in the arms of a shapeshifter, as she herself was transforming into one as well, she felt perfectly safe and content. She was no longer alone in the world. The dream was strangely comforting as Amelia watched it unfold. She was alone in the forest, walking among the trees. Small animals and deer surrounded her, scampering about. Then suddenly a she-bear stood before her, its eyes a warm and loving brown. It opened its arms, cast her a toothsome smile, and took her into its embrace. When it released her, Amelia realized that she was covered in soft black fur. She, too, was a she-bear with soft, loving brown eyes. "Wake up, sweetheart," said Skylar in her ear. She came out of her dream and opened her eyes, smiling up into two anxious faces. She wondered what they were worried about. Of course, she was perfectly all right. In fact, she was better now than she had ever been before. "Don't be frightened for me," she chuckled. "Don't you know that for the first time in my life, I am finally alive?" "It's time," said Joe, his eyes bright with the light of desire. "The second part of our ceremony is about to begin." "We're not doing it in here?" asked Amelia curiously. "No, sweetheart," Skylar said. "We're going someplace really special for that." "Come on," Joe said. "I want you to meet my father. As the elder, he must approve of you officially before we can do anything more. But don't worry, he's almost as excited about this union as we are." "I feel different," Amelia said as Skylar helped her to her feet. "Yes, sweetheart," he smiled. "You have much to learn, but all of that is for the future. Tonight, I want you to enjoy yourself." "I will," she said with a smile. Take me to your leader. And I thought I was the one who liked cheesy lines. Joe smirked as they started on their way, walking companionably together through the forest. Amelia was somewhat surprised at what she found as the three of them topped the rise. All across a small field just below them stood about 100 bears. She gasped and turned to bury her face into Skylar's arm. "Don't be nervous," said Joe as he stroked her hair. "I'm the elder's son. It's only natural they'll all want to get a look at the girl who has stolen my heart." Amelia blushed as she looked over at him. "Joe," she said softly when he pulled her into his embrace. Skylar gave her hair a little tug and kissed the top of her head. But when he tried to step back slightly and allow Joe to bring her down the hill, his friend grabbed his arm. "Don't do that, Sky. You have just as much right to walk with her as me. Let's all do this thing together." Laughing, Skylar came back and put his arm over top of Joe's. So their two appendages crisscrossed over Amelia's back. They descended with happy smirks as the others looked on. The bear equivalent of cheering was apparently a long, low growl. All of them stood up on their hind legs and waved their arms. Amelia shyly waved back. Suddenly, one of the bears morphed into Dale Carter, the man who owned the pub. "Congratulations, you three," he said with a grin. "I had a feeling this would happen." "So did I," Amelia admitted with a blush. "Father, there you are," said Joe as he stepped up to another bear with a smile. "I've brought you Amelia and her other mate as you requested. May I formally present our union?" The bear morphed. "Please do," said the man with a nod. Hi," said Amelia uncertainly. "Am I supposed to call you anything, sir?" He laughed delightedly. "My name is Kyle," he told her. "As you're now my daughter-in-law, I suppose you could call me that." "Oh," she mouthed, blushing again. "This is weird for me, sir. Kyle, I certainly wasn't expecting to be doing this tonight. We haven't discussed any of this at all. Cutting things close, son?" Kyle smirked. "Amelia has just had quite the adventure, sir," Skylar told him. "We've just rescued her from Harper's Lodge." "They dared to take her there?" he asked, his smile quickly turning to a much fiercer expression. "He said something about burying me with the next shipment of toxic wastes if I didn't become his bride," Amelia added with a disgusted frown. "Too bad there's no way to prove it," Skylar frowned. "It's hearsay to me, but Judy heard him directly," Amelia pointed out. "Only she's just become a coyote herself. She and Seth want very much to run away together. I wish there was some way we could help them, and have them help us." Kyle was looking speculative about this. Amelia saw him suddenly smile grimly. "There may well be," he told her. "But not tonight. Tonight is the mating ceremony, and most of these bears here would kill me if I took that away from them. However, tomorrow is another day. We will all return here and I'll decide then what's to be done." "Yes, sir," Skylar nodded. "Well, what are you waiting for?" Kyle chuckled. "Take your lady to bed. They're all waiting for the ceremony to begin." "We're not doing that in front of them, are we?" Amelia gasped. Joe chuckled and pointed to a little cabin near the trees. "Of course not, woman," he told her. "We'll be going in there."
Chapter 9. Amelia's body pulsed with unspent adrenaline as her two new mates each put a hand at the small of her back, guiding her slowly but surely towards the little cabin where Joe said they would consummate their union. A little thrum of excitement pushed all the butterflies who lived in her abdomen into a frenzy as they neared the door. If one more well-wisher stopped them along the way, she was certain she would have to commit murder. Then, they were inside, and Joe shut the door behind them. It was roughly noon when the second gathering of the Bear Clan happened. This time, most of the members arrived in their human forms, and their faces were grim as they discussed what was to be done about the coyotes. "Since I wasn't mating with anybody last night," said Kyle with a smirk, "I took the opportunity to see if something could be done to help Judy Bench and her lover escape the clutches of the rest of the Harpers." Of course, there were at least 100 coyotes there since it was a festival night, but most of them were intoxicated beyond belief or screwing each other's brains out, so it was easy enough to sneak into their lodge. "You'll be pleased to know that I have brought both Judy Bench and Seth Harper here." The two of them are now safely ensconced inside our own camp. Judy is here? Amelia gasped with surprise. Yes, she is, and she's also more than willing to disclose everything she's learned about the Coyote clan and all of the toxic waste that's been buried on their land. Apparently, this has been going on for quite a few years. Skylar frowned. You don't have to tell me that, he said. I'm the one who's been trying to stop it. Understood, Skylar, said Kyle. But if we're lucky, it may not be too much longer before you succeed. I hope so, he said with a smile. There's a lot of animals and humans who could benefit if I do. Just then, Judy and Seth came out of a small tent that had been hastily erected on the field. They both waved and smiled. Seth came up to speak, which had obviously been a pre-planned event since Kyle didn't seem surprised. I know that the bears and the coyotes haven't gotten along for many years, he told them. I know that I have done some things that I am really ashamed of, but it was all done out of fear. But no more. Because I have left the Coyote clan, and I have drank from the Bear clan cup, me and my new bride with me. We are no longer a part of that clan, but have come together with yours. And together, we're going to stop my father and brothers from continuing to pollute Moosehead Lake and hurt the people and animals who live here. I know for a fact that a new shipment is due today, and if we can catch them in the act of burying it, we can put a stop to my father's wicked ways once and for all. We can restore order and harmony to our home. He must know where you are, scoffed one of the men. He'll just change his plans again. We won't be able to stop him. No, Judy insisted. No, that's not right. The reason you've been failing to stop him is that you've given up each time either from fear or apathy. But not this time. This time, we can stop him. They're doing the drop tonight. If we can get it on film, we can nail them to the wall. I can get other EPA member out here tonight, Skylar said. But I need to have some assurances that this isn't some kind of a trap. How do I know you and Seth aren't here at his father's request? That's the beauty of the plan, said Judy. He thinks that he's allowed us to come here as a decoy, that I'm going to lie to you and keep you as far from the landing site as possible so you won't be able to catch him when the plane comes. Instead, we're going to show you exactly where they've been digging all week so you can catch them in the act. And then, Judy and I will be free to live our lives in whatever way we please. This is one of the most important things that we have ever done for this region, and we must pull it off without a hitch, Skylar briefed some of the agents as they were all preparing to head out. We need to go quick, and we need to go quiet. Amelia smirked when she heard him say that, and he winked at her, continuing his little speech without missing a beat. She and Judy were not going to be a part of the endeavor, so they were standing off to one side observing. Seth had agreed to show Skylar where the digging had been most recently done, but at the moment he was still in his tent preparing to go. You must all get into position and wait, cameras at the ready, Skylar continued. Man every possible drop point on the grid. Those of you who can shift should maintain your animal forms as much as possible to make your presence more difficult to detect. Remember, these coyotes are very tricky, and they will kill you if they perceive you as a threat. Do not hesitate to protect yourselves. About what time is the drop expected to happen? Asked one of the agents. Seth tells me that the usual time is after midnight, but all of you must be in position well before then and make sure that you're hidden, Skylar explained. It is imperative that they are unaware of your presence in order for the filming to work. Once the drop happens, whoever has the mark must get themselves and the film out of the forest as quickly as possible. Without that film for evidence, Harper will just get away with what he's been doing again. We won't let you down, sir, said another agent, shaking Skylar's hand. Good, then you men head out, he told the team. I'll just say a quick goodbye to my wife and be right behind you. Amelia grinned broadly when she heard him say that, and she stepped over to him. You don't have time to be worried about me, sir. Go and do what you do best. Well, no, I have to go take care of this little excursion first, he teased her. When I come home, then I'll do what I do best. One-track mind alert, Amelia chuckled. Skylar gave her a kiss. Well, take good care of Joe while I'm gone, sweetheart, and when I get back we'll spend some time by ourselves. Sounds like a plan, she agreed. Just then, Seth came out to join the group of men. He had a look of grim determination on his face as he stepped over to give Judy a kiss as well. Well then, Seth, lead the way, said Skylar, giving Amelia a wink. And then, almost as if they'd never been there to begin with, the entire team vanished into the night. A few hours later, Skylar stood with Seth near the dig site he'd insisted was the target. He had also sent agents to several other key locations, just in case. He was certain that one of the other sites, and not the one Seth believed to be the right one, would be the drop point. It was no great surprise to hear the low hum of a small plane's engine around the time Seth had told them, and then a large box fell to the ground just above another site rather than the one he named. Consternation riddling his face, Seth watched as several members of the Coyote clan stepped into view. Skylar looked unconcerned. You knew this would happen? Seth growled irritably. When were you going to tell me about it? I've been dealing with your father for a long time, Skylar said. Remember, he sent you to distract me. What better way to do that than to feed false information to you as well? Don't worry, though, my men won't let anything happen to us. As my father promised, we won't let your father harm you either. But what about the waste? Seth hissed. He's going to get away with it again. We have no idea where that shipment was dropped. Actually, there's where you're wrong, Skylar smirked. I have a team filming the activity at the drop site as we speak. That's what the little red light on my watch means. Now, don't you think we should probably get out of here? Good idea, Seth agreed as they glanced over at the group of coyotes headed straight for them. Leading the way out, Skylar led the men who had been standing with him back towards their boat, only to find Harper and his boys blocking the way. We meet again, Skylar Vernon, Harper smirked. Only this time, I've caught you dead to rights. What are you doing on my land? I could have you locked up for a long time for this. You won't do that, Skylar smirked. You won't want to be next to me in the cell. What are you talking about, Skylar? He scoffed. Why would I be next to you? Because I just got confirmation, he explained. Your shipment drop and burial is now on film, and you have no way to prevent it from being viewed this time because the agent who filmed it is acting with a warrant. Anger flickered across Harper's face as he stared, dumbfounded, at his smirking son. He took 3 steps in his direction, his face clearly showing his intentions to strike him down. Stop right there, Harper, Skylar told him with a menacing frown. You're never going to beat this young man again. Oh. And who is going to stop me? He sneered. You and what army? Funny you should mention that, Skylar said dryly. I've actually brought along a few more friends this time. You know, just in case. 20 black bears surrounded them, stepping into the clearing and growling as one. The sound was disconcerting and deafening. All of the coyotes began to whimper as they stared. Hold your ground. Harper shouted, but his words fell upon deaf ears. All of his so-called protection ran off into the trees, even his 2 sons. You traitors! I'll have your hides for abandoning me. Harper morphed and began to run, and the bears followed after him in hot pursuit. Not much later, the unmistakable sounds of an injured animal calling out in pain floated on the breeze. Skylar looked smugly in Seth's direction, and he smirked right back. Well, all in all, this has been a most satisfactory evening, said Seth. Yes, it has, Skylar agreed. Now, what do you say we leave the fighting to the rest of the team and get back to our brides? That's the best idea I've heard all night, Seth agreed. And that's exactly what they did. The end.
If you want more paranormal romances like this, please, my love, be sure to subscribe to the Romancely YouTube channel. I look forward to spending more time with you. Subscribe and let's make it happen.